страху страждано все. Я знаю, інші гордовито прапороносець понесе. Дивлюсь на нього я востаннє у незв'язованій журбі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання воно вібрало у собі.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар. походу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні. У нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод. Слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Есть.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 259 of the stream. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be reporting on the past 48 hours of the war in Ukraine, considering that we took the day off on Monday, like we do every week. But before we begin, I know that a large amount of y'all are viewers here from the United States, around 55% of our audiences, and I want to make two comments, one on the fundraiser and one on what is happening here in the United States and what that means for our channel. So, of course, as many of y'all know, there are currently midterm elections going on here in the United States. Because of that, I know a lot of people, probably a lot of our viewers, are hyped up over whoever they voted for, whatever party they represent. One thing I would like to say, though, is that here on this channel, we don't really talk a lot about America, well, really at all about American politics. We actually have a rule against it. And, of course, just to make a quick address, because I know that everyone's probably wondering, I hope that people go out and vote, and if they do, I hope that the government, whichever one's elected, whether it have a majority of one party or the other, is able to lead the nation to levels of success that we've never seen before, and levels of prosperity that one can only wish can be attained. Although that's always a high goal, hopefully this next government, whoever composes it, will be able to guide the country in a good direction. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, please don't talk about politics too much, because I know that a lot of people are just chomping at the bits and raring to go to talk about who they voted for and who they believe in. Please save that for another stream or our Discord. We do allow political discussions on the Discord, so if you want to talk about politics with each other, you can take it over there, but we don't allow that on the live stream. So with that, it's now time to talk about something that happened on Sunday, the Sunday fundraiser. And believe it or not, we had a goal of $7,500. And we made it to $8,905. Let's go! And of course, I got to thank each and every one of y'all in the Lee Spring Army for helping us to get to that point. And also, it looks like it's live streaming the wrong screen the entire time. So real quick, Matthew.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, it is. So let me go and switch that around.
Oh, it's showing the YouTube dashboard.
Yeah, it's showing the whole dashboard the whole time. So let me go and switch this around real quick. And let me pop up OBS. I don't know why.
This is like a behind-the-scenes look for all of you.
Yeah, this is a behind-the-scenes look. So let me go and try and change the display capture. Oh, let's see here. Properties. Let's see. Capture method. We want it to be on which window? Display 2? The primary monitor? It's showing nothing. What is going on here? Let me try and figure that out. So, don't know why.
And also, by the way, folks, I'm the Enforcer's tech support, so if you see me missing in a minute, that's probably what I'm working on.
So real quick, everyone, I'm trying to figure out what is going on here. So let me go back to properties. Let me go back to, let's see here. Maybe I need to add one. Let me add a display capture real quick. Display capture 1. So real quick, okay. And then we want.
Dang, and also I gotta call it out. Walter, what is going on, man? Walter puts in a $400 donation. That is insane. And we're gonna have to address that in a minute. I don't want to call it out to the Enforcer just yet because he's a little distracted, but we are certainly going to get around to that in just a moment.
Okay, so let me see if that works. So we're just gonna hold it here for just a second. Sorry everyone about the technical glitches and delays, because for some reason our OBS just wanted to screw up for the night, and now I have a yellow border around my computer screen. I don't know what OBS is doing. This is really stupid. But give me just a second. I'm waiting to see as the stream catches up. Are y'all seeing my screen or not? And there we go. So now we're back. Of course, welcome back, everyone. And to carry on with what we were saying, we are going to be talking about the Sunday night fundraiser. Now that we've finally gotten everything fixed where y'all can actually see the map. So we were able to raise $8,905, and of course, well above the goal. Somewhere about like $1,400 above. And for the $7,500 goal, and also for a fundraiser, the IFAW, which helps out pets and animals in Ukraine, it is honestly crazy to see that we were able to raise so much funds and so much support for those poor animals in Ukraine. And I thank every single one of y'all so much for helping out that fundraiser and helping us to get to, I believe right now, around $580,000 to $590,000 raised in support of Ukraine. I'll have to go back and do the actual number crunching after the stream or sometime around, because I've been running very short in time these days, but still great to see. And I got to thank each and every one of y'all once again for helping us to get that far. But now it is time to finally address what we're all here for tonight.
And also real quick, Enforcer, just so you know, it's showing the taskbar on the screen as well.
Oh, great. It looks like OBS is just gone and effed everything up. So let me go and see if I can fix that problem. So, I think we just gotta... Nope. You wanna... So now it's not letting me fix that problem. Great.
So what about showing the taskbar as an OPSEC issue?
Well, it shows our... Well, I don't even know why it's an OPSEC issue, because it only shows our time. So, and I know someone's about to say, but it shows the weather. The weather is pretty standard across all of Birmingham, so I don't think that anyone will be finding us off of that. Anyways, it is now time to fix those problems later, because that's getting incredibly aggravating. And it's now time to move on to what this stream is about, which is about the news, not all the technical glitches that have now happened to my OBS for no reason at all. So now we go to Moscow, because of course the title tonight says Ukrainians stop every Russian push, and what's kind of weird is that y'all are thinking, well, how in the world does Moscow's propaganda news tie into that statement? Wouldn't that be related to the front lines in Ukraine, not in Russia? Well, the Russians brought on air live a quote-unquote Russian soldier from Donetsk, and he had some very interesting things to say about what's going on there. So, real quick, I'm going to show you all this video. Hopefully this works. Watch it also not be playing the audio, so let me go back and check that it will. And it should be. So, let's play this clip, and I'm going to show y'all the Russians saying that out of their own mouths.
Что касается населенных пунктов, есть ли какие-то, которые сможем взять в ближайшее время? Или свои успехи фиксируем пока только метрами и километрами, совсем медленно продвигаясь?
Я процитирую своего друга-снайпера, который вот много месяцев под Марьинкой работает, под Донецком. Марьинка, Александровка, Авдеевка, Пески. Мы наступаем 3 сантиметра в день. Его фраза.
Ooh! A little bit of a tough phrase right there. We're advancing 3 centimeters a day. That means that they're moving about an inch every day, according to this sniper. And watch this news reporter, of course, sounding a little pessimistic. This is so pessimistic, she has to get him off air immediately. So let's listen to that.
Его фраза. Без комментариев.
Понятно. Спасибо вам огромное, Дмитрий Стешин, военный корреспондент «Комсомольской правды».
She's like, how's the war going? He's like, terrible. She's like, well, have a great day. Oh, man.
A move commonly seen on American mainstream TV.
Yes, but on American mainstream TV, real quick to cover that, whatever channel you go to, you'll see it the same. They'll sit there and go, uh-oh, we're having technical difficulties. Can you hear us? Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Well, that's unfortunate, as we're going to a commercial break. See you around, and then they bring on the next guest. But in Russia, they literally just have to go, oh, okay, well, have a good day now.
На прямой связи Донбасс, линия фронта. Спасибо большое.
And now she sounds all deflated and stuffy. She's like, how in the world am I supposed to work with this and run off of it? And she can't. You know, there's just no way you really can. And so with that, that's the end of that little clip. And y'all can see that, according to the Russians, they're not even moving an inch, and the Ukrainians have stopped them dead. With that, it's now time to move on over to Perm. Because Perm is a place where you can get many things, like vodka, simichki, perms, all kinds of stuff. And one thing that you can really find around here is the average Russian and what they're saying on a day-to-day basis. So let's watch this clip with translations showing us what people in, I guess you could say, provincial Russia think and what they've been taught and raised on. So here's the video.
Здравствуйте.
Это что за херня прибор?
А просто снимаю. Ну, какая страна вам нравится из зарубежных?
Зарубежная?
Да.
Чихал на зарубежную страну. Понял?
Why does this guy gotta square up over such a simple question? You know, like he's
He
like,
really is. He's in the fighting stance
dude,
and everything.
Dude, that's like, what's your favorite color? I like blue, asshole. You got a problem with it? You know, it's like, what? It's like this guy is coming swinging right out the gate as we got a alpine climber back here.
Понял, да? Чихал на это. Всякие американцы, Франции.
Like, I mean, what's with this? You know, he could have been asking about the Chinese for all he knows. He didn't even ask the guy to elaborate. He immediately goes to America. I hate America. It's like, dude, he didn't even specify in which country. You could have said, oh yeah, I like Kazakhstan. It's a nice place.
Чихал на это. Всякие американцы, Франции и немцы, чтобы уничтожить. Я Россию люблю. Пши на 3 буквы. Понял? Все.
То есть вы и США,
Я
и
водку люблю.
And also, this man's going to reaffirm, he's going to personally make it his responsibility to reaffirm the stereotype to everyone that Russians are alcoholics. He's going like, I love vodka. It's like, what does that have to do with anything?
Really? Like, screw other countries, but I love vodka.
Зарубежные страны, какие лучше России, ничего нету, чего говорить-то? Мы в России живем лучше других стран.
You know, I like how this woman says this while living in what appears to be the equivalent of suburban Detroit. She's like, I like this place. It's perfect. Nothing's better.
It's like, have they ever even been out of Russia to know?
Probably not, because, you know, of course, most Russians make so little income that it's almost impossible for them to travel abroad unless, you know, say it's like, unless if they live near the border, maybe they can go to the Baltics or maybe they can go to Kazakhstan. But beyond that, probably most of them have never even left the country.
Да? А чувствуете ли вы превосходство там над другими странами?
Ой, не знаю. Никуда за границу не ездила, не знаю. Но у нас дома же лучше. В России же лучше. Где нас...
Oh, wait, she just said it right there. She said she's never been abroad.
Well, that explains why they think Russia's the best.
She's like, I've never been abroad. I don't know, but Russia's got to be the best. It's just got to be.
В России же лучше. Где нас встретят? Нигде нас ничего не встречает. Мы все равно для всех чужаки. Своя родина, своя Россия лучше.
Ага, спасибо.
Я не люблю, я ненавижу. Я не люблю, которые Россию унижают.
I just gotta say, who in the world goes around with a whole bottle of Smirnoff vodka in the middle of the day in their jacket pocket, slurping on it? Like, I'm still just blown away. This man is day drinking as a career. And, you know, it's like, it blows me away.
Великая держава. Будешь жить, жил и будешь жить. Кто только не подал? Шведы, турки, поляки. Россия кем только не воевал? Чечня, Афганистане. Мы же победили всегда. Wait
a minute. What? Hey, they didn't win Afghanistan. They left. They left and they lost. What is he talking about?
Я чего люблю? Я Россию всегда любил, уважаю. Я медицинский работник. Утвержден медицинский СЗ. 33 года медицина. Я людей спасал. Чтобы они жили. Потому что мы ж, наверное, дурной народ. Если правый газ...
He's not really an optimist about Russians.
Потому что Россия... хуй возьмешь Россию. Понял?
Понял.
Oh, look! It's the flag of the Communist Party. I have high hopes for this area of the country. Yes, the playground. Dang, Mandy, what is this guy? Michael Myers? Look at him go. Watch this. The man is Michael Myers.
What kind of cut was that?
I don't even know. This place is depressing, really. And here's my question, Matthew. Why in the world does everyone in this part of Russia act like a camera is so foreign? Like, everywhere he goes, everyone's like, oh, is that one of those newfangled cameras? Like,
yeah, they're all kind of scared and leery of the cameras, too.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Сложный вопрос. Какая страна вам нравится из зарубежных?
Кроме России никто. У меня Россия, я вырос в России. Буду жить в России.
Понятно. Можешь вам подсказать, можешь вам...
And also, Matthew, what is that British actor that was in the movie Dunkirk? You know, the older guy who owned the boat. Do you remember his name?
Oh, I can't remember his name, but let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Wait a minute,
Let's
hang
see.
on. Dunkirk, cast. Let's see if we can find the cast here. Oh, come on. Come on, I know we can find him. Yeah, Mark Rylance! Why does this man look like a discount Mark Rylance?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
it kind of
okay.
does.
Okay, look. Mark Rylance and the Russian guy here. Let's look at him again. That looks like Mark Rylance.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
СССР, когда было, когда СССР, комсомольцем, пионером был, а сейчас в России живу. Монголы лезли, хуизли, Наполеон лезли, Гитлер лезли. А чего шли? Они говном шли, блядь. Мы Россию никогда не ненавидели.
If I remember correctly, hang on. He said the Mongols tried us, and then some of these guys tried us. I've never heard of the country of how do I say that in a polite term, a very medical, clinical term, Matthew?
What are you trying to describe?
It's kind of a private area. How would I say that in a very clinical term? See,
Not really sure.
well, anyways, I've never heard of that country right here trying to attack Russia. So I don't think they have, but I might be wrong. I'll have to fact check that. But let's check out the Mongols. The Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan. Let's take a look at the size of this country. Because, you know, he said the Mongols tried us, but I'm looking at the map here of what the Mongols owned around the 12 to 1300s, and I gotta say, I see where Moscow would be in most of populated Russia these days, and also all of Ukraine, and it looks like it was all Mongolian at a point. So I don't really think he's correct with that statement, because it looks like they kind of owned the place a little while. So we're gonna let the video continue.
Если любишь Россию, Россия велика.
Ага. Ладно, спасибо. Ценим.
Зарубежная страна Замбер. Где зарубежная страна Замбора? Где страна Замбора? Да, наверное, зарубежная страна Зам.
Ну, давайте я вам скажу, может, вам Украина нравится.
Man, this guy is bold.
Украина мне нравится, они же воюют.
I like how the woman says they have a war, like it's a store-bought item, you know, like a cookie or some flour. They have a war. Oh yeah, I bought that at the discount aisle for $19.99.
Они же воюют. Сейчас мне нравится. Раньше, когда Союз СССР был, тогда нравилось. Сейчас нет.
Может, стрелять?
Malamar. Я докладываю гизей. Волонтер журналист.
Ну, журналист.
Журналист.
You know, honestly though, I have to take a sympathetic moment here, because when you see someone living in such a poor area of a country, like Russia, you know, that claims to be a first world country, and you see someone having to go to the village well to get buckets of water to bring back to their house because there's no indoor plumbing or any kind of water source, that tells you that these people think Russia is the best because they've never seen anything better. Most of these people have probably never even been to Moscow or St. Petersburg to see what that looks like. And these are the people that Russia is conscripting, that are living almost like they're in the early 20th century in France or Britain, to go and fight in this war. And these people have never seen indoor plumbing. They don't even have water, probably gas. They don't have any of it inside of their house. And so they're living off of wood-burning stoves and well water from the local village well. And that's really sad when you think about it. And this is probably why most of these people think that Russia's the best, because they're so disconnected from what a first world is like, you know, technologically and I guess you say standard of living wise, that they really have nothing to compare it with. Now see it cut, now he's on a muddy little road, heading further back into another village, it seems.
Какая страна вам нравится?
Конечно, Россия.
Ну, кроме России.
Я нигде не была, не знаю, где что нравится, только по телевизору. От меня проку мало. Я уже старая.
Ну, давайте.
Man, they have TV out there?
They have TV? Wait a minute, they don't have...
That's unbelievable.
They don't have indoor plumbing or washing machines, but they got TVs.
Those priorities are right.
Yeah, the priorities are right, because with a TV, you can get propaganda into the house. Indoor plumbing doesn't help with that. So you got to emphasize the TV more.
США нравится?
Нет, Просите там помоложе есть.
Спасибо.
There she goes with her bucket of water back to her house. And he now continues on down the... Lord, this
Людей
is depressing.
спрашиваю.
Так, Украина вали, бандера остановили, что ли?
Ну, такое тоже есть.
Такой не надо нам.
Ну, тогда...
Если по-доброму, только...
Не по-доброму. Ну, вопрос. Какая страна вам нравится?
Oh, Enforcer. I see somebody point out in the live chat real quick why they probably have TVs but no indoor plumbing. Because it's more important that the propaganda get out to all the people than having plumbing.
I said that a minute ago, Matthew. I said the propaganda is more important than indoor plumbing because the TV.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I said that.
Okay,
I
didn't hear you then.
I said that earlier, and then 1 minute later, wait a minute, Andrew, I got a great idea. Got the TV's propaganda. It's like, oh, I already said
Да,
that.
какая страна? Почему нравится?
Какая страна нам нужна? Больше
Больше не надо
России
никто.
никого не нужно.
Только 8 можем съездить.
Jing, look at that. I hate to laugh at this kind of stuff, but this woman's letting the well bucket back down to the bottom of the well where the water is, and this thing is built, the well cover is built so poorly, the whole thing is shaking around. Look at this, Matthew, watch. She lets it go, and the whole thing looks like it's about to come out of the ground.
Больше не надо никто. Только 8 можем съездить.
Oh my lord.
Dang.
А ну держи верха.
And now she's bringing the bucket back up.
Может, вам из зарубежных какая-нибудь нравится?
Нет. Только Россия.
А, может, вам Великобритания нравится?
Ну да. Ничего не нравится. Сказать обязательно. Россия нравится. Все. Больше лучше России нету.
Может, вам помочь?
Не надо сейчас выйти.
Ну, тогда, может, Украина? Что?
Нет.
Ладно,
Нет. Да давайте.
я рад. Спасибо.
Well, they got a car? There's a car in this village. They're getting water from a well, but they got a car. This stuff, sometimes this stuff doesn't even make any sense. Huh.
Нет, почему отвечает?
Отвечать, мне ничего не нравится. В этой жизни ничего не нравится.
This woman is a ray of sunshine. I don't like anything in this
Именно в
life.
этой жизни или то, что мы здесь живем, а так?
В этой жизни можно жить, а так... А нас в зумах. Лучше промолчать и... Ну, наверное, здорово.
Подойдите-ка сюда.
Uh-oh, Matthew. It looks like we gotten into the
This
interesting
guy's about to be in
bit.
trouble.
I've been making for 5 days in a row. I can't function. Oh no. This is not gonna be good. Oh, wait a minute. He's got the Abibus. He's got the Abibus. He's got the 3
Oh,
drag
he
stripes,
does.
but it doesn't go all the way up the pants.
It's only from the kneecap down.
Кого? Ну,
С этого, блядь, района, блядь, 5, блядь, пацанов, блядь,
Uh-oh.
забрали, блядь.
да?
Да.
Не были вашими друзьями?
I'm not gonna lie, Matty. He's actually walking kind of decently right here. He's walking like he was in a music video. Watch.
Блядь, района, блядь, 5, блядь, пацанов, блядь,
Have a sick
забрали,
beat
блядь.
go. It's a music video.
Да.
Не были вашими друзьями?
Мои, блядь, друзья.
Они уже на фронте? Или как?
Что, блядь, на фронте, да? Я сам, блядь, нет, блядь, добровольец. Вот сейчас, блядь, пытаюсь, блядь, заявку.
Собираетесь, да?
Да.
Удачи тогда.
Also, some of y'all may be wondering before we let this video in, what is this weird looking yellow pipe that goes over the roads and everything and is just unsightly and it's incredibly ugly? Well, believe it or
Oh,
not.
please don't tell me it's a sewer pipe.
No, it's not a sewer pipe. This is a heating pipe. You see, you know how New York City has radiators, Matthew, inside of the buildings that allow them to be heated in the wintertime?
Yes.
So in Russia, because it's cold everywhere, they needed that for every single village. So what they would do is they would create a heat generating facility. So it's pretty much just pumping through hot steam. They would cook up all the hot steam, and if you had the luxury of being connected to this pipeline, you had working radiators that had heat. And that's what this is. In New York City, they bury these things underground. In Russia, because it's cheaper, they built the pipeline overground. And so they're everywhere. They're incredibly ugly.
Is there any reason they couldn't like make it straight?
The reason why they can't make it straight is because it passes over roads. So what they'll do to get around that problem is they'll just make a right 90-degree angle up and then a right 90-degree angle going in the correct direction again to get over a road.
Huh.
Also, everyone's saying natural gas. Sorry, everyone. That is natural gas. I got that wrong. But still, you will find in some places in Russia some of the heating pipes as well, which are the exact same as these. I believe they're white, if I'm correct. These are yellow, and I didn't observe that until y'all all said that. Now everyone's saying it, so it is a gas line. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip and out of Russia. We've now had enough enough of an interesting look into Russia, and so now it's time to return to Ukraine to cover the location unknowns. And we actually have some pretty interesting ones on day 258, like the Ukrainians obliterating a T-62M. But before we get to that, I've seen some very interesting polls being thrown up by Matthew, also with some interesting voting results. Oh, hopefully that doesn't start anything. And so with that, let's get into the polls.
All right. So in tonight's election and poll, the question is, do you think these Russians are scared to talk? It looks like 63% said yes, the FSB will come after them. 12% said maybe, but I can't tell. And 25% said no, it's the vodka talking. Now on this one, I have to probably say it's probably likely the FSB or some kind of Russian authority will probably come down on these people if they said anything negative, especially to a camera where multiple people can see it. But at the same time, I think it's a mixture of both vodka and that, because clearly they're very intoxicated. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I'm going to have to be honest. I'm going to have to go with the minority of voters here and say it's most likely the vodka talking. A lot of people think, and I think this is a little bit of a misconception, the FSB is powerful, but the only way the FSB is powerful, mostly that we see, is through, I guess you could say, higher-ups. That's usually where I guess you could say secret organizations like the CIA, the FBI, the FSB, China's secret police, that's usually where they come into play, is trying to corral the upper groups. I guess you could say the more affluent political elite or business elite, because through them they can control the populace. Controlling little people in a village that are practically insignificant, like these people most likely are for Russia, is mostly pointless. So for the most part, they'll leave these people alone. They either completely believe in what they're saying, or they're drunk, and they just go with it anyways, because what do they know? They don't know anything else. And of course, when people don't travel a lot, usually you just get into a mindset of, wherever I live is the best. And that is the case in some places in the United States. Now, let me say this real quick. America is an impressive country, and I do believe that it is one of the best in the world, but there's still room to improve. And when you travel to foreign countries, sometimes you see areas where the United States falls short, like in Britain. And of course, a lot of people from Europe that are watching the stream right now are going to be like, oh, you're full of crap. In Britain, they have railroads and public transportation, and it's unbelievable to go over there and think that you can go from one city to the other without ever having to drive a car and get from point A to point B without ever even having to get behind a steering wheel. That isn't possible to think of in a place like the southern United States, and when you come back here, you're like, wow, wouldn't that be nice? Because we have Amtrak, but Amtrak is nothing close to anything that's in a European country in that regard. And so, I guess you could say that for a while there, I actually thought it was America was the best in all regards. And then sometimes you see, well, we could improve in one way or another, but still, it's a pretty good place. In Russia, however, if you don't even have indoor plumbing or any kind of water, I gotta say that's not even getting close to being good. That's just pretty rough all around. And I know that someone's about to say this, Matthew. Someone's about to say, oh, well, you don't know anything about trains because you don't live in the Northeast Corridor. Yeah, I know. That's the only place in America that has viable trains, and it's only in one route, from Boston to Washington, pretty much, and that's it. Anything in between there, you're set. Everywhere else in America, you're not.
Generally speaking, American public transit is pretty lacking.
It's incredibly lacking. In America, you practically have to have, in case if you're European and you don't know, you practically have to have a car if you're living in the United States to get anywhere. Our infrastructure isn't built for people to walk. On top of that, our cities are so sparsely dense. I guess you could say it's so spacious or sparse in terms of density that you can't walk from place to place because it could be like 5 to 10 miles, and that's just impossible. So you would have to have a car to travel from point A to point B. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. Really interesting one as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so that was our only poll for the moment. But before we move into our super chat questions, I want to let everybody know, as usual, if you have a question for us and you don't want to put in a donation, feel free to tag me at Enforcer Matt and put your message in the live chat, and I'll add it to our spreadsheet. And because tonight is going to be a little bit lower viewership-wise because of the midterms going on, it's very likely we can probably get to your question. So, with that being said, we're moving on to our first super chat, which is, of course, the one from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who put in that very generous $400 donation. He says, "Aloha, the Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG."
Reconnecting right now, and it has. So we can now go. Please go back and send us because I think it cut off for some people.
All right, and also, are we sure we're back?
Yes, we are. We are back now.
All right, so back to Walter's question. I'm just going to read it from the top again. Walter said, "Aloha, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. It seems something is fishy or stinking in Denmark and Herzon on the Russian side. It seems Ukraine is using the first principle of Sun Tzu's art of war in this whole war. It's going to be the downfall for whole of Russia. This is how I see it from the maps on the war."
And I thank you so much for the support, Walter A. Lakota. And of course, thank you. I mean, I really do mean thank you so much for the massive amount of support. That kind of support is just unbelievable. And I thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to stay alive, because it does, of course, mean a lot to us that people help us to keep doing this as a full-time job. And so in that regard, thank you so much once again. And to address what you've been saying, if you're saying that something is fishy or stinking in Denmark, something that I have not been able to confirm because I haven't been able to look into it too much, but it does appear, and of course, Matthew, remember when the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was hit by something and destroyed and no one really knew who it was?
Yes, isn't that convenient how that story kind of went away?
It is a little convenient, and from what I've heard, and of course this may be entirely wrong because I haven't done a lot of research into it, one of the reasons that the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom resigned was because they used an iPhone to message the Secretary of Defense in the United States and tell them that they had destroyed the Nord Stream line. Now,
really?
I'm not sure if that story is true, but if it is, go UK, because that was... now, of course, it seems that the story may have leaked out a little bit, and in that regard, very unfortunate, but it would make a decent amount of sense for a Western country to destroy the Nord Stream pipeline, because it would cause a decent amount of economic damage to the Russians, and there's really nothing they can do about it, really. But still, one thing I have to say with that one is take that with a massive grain of salt, a massive one, like one that's about a truck size, because I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't really seen a lot of backup or detail or information to that, but I did see that passing by the other day, and I was like, it's plausible to me, because originally we believed that the United States was most likely the one to have destroyed the Nord Stream, because it wouldn't make a lot of sense for the Russians to have done that and damaged their own economy. That would be shooting themselves in the foot. But if the British did it, or the United States did it, it would make a decent amount of sense. It's causing economic damage to Russia that they cannot necessarily repair. So, with that in mind, if it was the United Kingdom, good job. If it wasn't, well, we're going to go back and try and look at the information a little bit better. And so with that, and of course, one thing I gotta say, because I have seen some people saying this, I know I don't believe it all the way. That's why I'm saying take it with a massive grain of salt. But if it is true, it seems that would make a decent amount of sense to me. So with that, we are now going to be moving on. Well, not moving on to the next one. We're going to continue to move on from that. If that's what you're talking about, it's stinking in Denmark, perhaps so. In Kherson and the Russian times, it seems that Ukraine is using the first principle of the art of war in this whole war, and it's going to be downfall for the whole of Russia. One thing I would say is that the Ukrainians, and not getting into a massive amount of detail on what they're doing, they are playing their cards incredibly well. And someone's saying that my mic keeps cutting out, so we're having a million problems tonight. That may just be lag issues. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry about that again. But one thing I will say is that the Ukrainians are playing their cards incredibly well. Of course, they've been regaining massive amounts of ground, sometimes the size of U.S. states, just by playing the cards well. Even against massive numbers that they shouldn't be able to push back, they're still pushing them back. And so in that regard, especially in Kherson, I do think that they're playing the cards quite well, and we may see that they'll retake all the ground on the northern banks of the Dnipro River. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Walter. You are helping this channel to keep running. And real quick, everyone, I want to see, since I did say something and we don't really have a lot of support for this statement, let's see if we can find anything about the former Prime Minister sending this message. So, let's see. It's done. And let me see if we can find it. Let's see here. So, it appears that out of everyone that's reporting on it, the only mainstream media channel that's reporting on it here in the United States appears to have been CNN. Everyone else, and I gotta say this, Hindustan Times has never been known as credible. They actually said something that we looked into months ago on stream, and it was not true, and so for that reason, I'm largely going to have to say that this one is debunked as untrue. Now, I did say it a little bit earlier, and I did say take it with a massive grain of salt, so keep that in mind. But now looking into it, I don't really think there's a lot of credibility to that statement, so it's still up in the air, although I would largely believe that it was the United States that did it, and because it would only make sense, not going down that massive rabbit hole again. But thank you so much once again for the support, Walter, and helping this stream to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and moving on to our next one, we have a $100 super chat from Chip Kerwan, who is a longtime channel viewer. But sadly, Chip, the super chat is very political, and I think you kind of wrote it in a way to not be political, but sadly, it does get quite deep into politics. Enforcer, do you know which super chat I'm talking about, and would you like to address it?
I do see it, and I will address it. One thing, though, of course, I got to say, Chip, thank you so much for the massive amount of support. We don't really delve a lot into American politics on here, but I will say this, and I'll try and make it quick. I have said this before. I don't think it's political, but it's not political, so I'll say this. One thing that's important to remember, and I can see that you're talking about some people supporting Ukraine, some people not supporting Ukraine, is that in terms of support to Ukraine, and this is backed up with historical precedents, especially in just the 21st century alone, both parties love to say that a war is terrible and it needs to stop when they're not the one that has the majority. That's just the way things are, and it's to cause a bit of discourse and to, of course, try and, I guess you could say, play the public in a way. And you can see this in both Iraq and Afghanistan, so allow me real quick to go back through and explain these. In Iraq and Afghanistan, we saw the leadership of the country change from one party to the next and then to the next. And each time, each party would come in, like, for example, in 2008, the party that was not in charge at that point would say, this war is terrible in Iraq, we need to leave now, we knew it was a mistake, we need to go. They got elected, they took over Congress and the executive branch, and then the war continued on almost entirely until its completion, and then they withdrew. So that's one thing you have to remember. Another thing that you also have to remember is that in Afghanistan, that appeared to have no end in sight. It started under one administration, it changed to the party of the next administration, then it changed to the party of the old administration, and then it changed to a new administration, and only then did it end, and that was a combined effort by both the previous administration and this one to end that war as well. And meanwhile, every time an election came around, everyone was saying that the war was bad, it should end, and it shouldn't have happened. It's just something that these parties do, and that's why tonight, and I know a lot of people have the midterms on their mind, regardless of who wins, you'll probably see this happen, and this is how it'll most likely go. The party that comes in let's just say hypothetically it's the one that's not in charge. They're currently the one, like it's seen as a historical precedent, that's saying the war's terrible, it shouldn't go on. You'll see something happen in Ukraine that's quite actually mundane in terms of Russia's war crimes, most likely another mass cruise missile attack on Ukraine's infrastructure, and then this party that's now been elected in will go, oh my god, that's unacceptable, forget ending the war, we need to support them, and it'll continue on. That's most likely what will happen. So I don't really put a lot of weight into what people in the United States are saying about the war. The support will continue regardless of who's in charge, because historically it always does. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well without delving too much into it. I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much, Chip, for helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to stay alive. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the final one for the first question segment goes to Jonesy, who puts in a $60 donation and says, recovering from surgery, immobile and disoriented. I thought yesterday was today and devastated you weren't streaming, LOL. You guys make time pass more quickly and keep up the good work. And please give a question to someone in the chat and Slava Ukraine. And also, Jonesy, I wish you a quick recovery.
And thank you so much once again, Jonesy, for the support. And I too wish you a well recovery. Being not being in any kind of state that doesn't feel good is terrible. Whether it be a massive medical issue like a heart disease or a headache, it's always terrible. And I thank you so much for the kind words as well, and in us helping you to pass the time. I'm glad that we do. And by that regard, I wish we could keep this thing running all day, so that way we could just make time fly and have you a whole lot better by the end of it. But sadly, it can't happen. But thank you so much once again for the kind words and the support, and I thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running as well, because through your support we're able to help time pass hopefully quickly for everyone that's watching the channel, but that's very optimistic. And so that, thank you so much once again, and we're going to make sure to answer a live chat in your honor, Jonesy. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question goes to, let's see here, it goes to Otubes, who says, did you hear that Russia has found a way around sanctions and get alcohol and other big brand names imported into Russia?
I don't think they have, and one thing that's very important to remember is that Russia does not import any of its spirits. Well, that of course is a little bit of an exaggeration. They import an incredibly small amount, but Russia ensures that there is a readily available cheap supply of spirits in their country at all given times. It's a historical fact, as a matter of fact, all the way back to the 1600s. The Russian government, whichever one it may be, whether it be Tsarist, Soviet, or Russian Federation, has always ensured that the alcohol manufacturers are state-run and that they are always pumping out cheap alcohol. That's the best.
I wonder why.
Well, the good question. There's actually an answer to it. The Russians...
I know the answer, too.
The Russians found out almost 400 years ago that keeping the Russian population drunk beyond belief is the best way to keep it under control. And you could actually see, and this is very interesting, and this shows how far back this goes, you could see that during the early communist era, when the Russian Civil War was going on, Lenin ensured that there was a massive campaign against drinking alcohol, because at that point, alcohol was considered, and I'm just speaking about Lenin's beliefs here, these aren't mine at all, this is just what Lenin said. Lenin believed that alcohol was a controlling tool by the Russian bourgeoisie, and through alcohol they were able to control the masses a lot easier because they were so drunk and so inebriated that there was really nothing they could do to resist anything or to speak out against their horrible living conditions. And so during Lenin's time in the Soviet Union, there was a massive anti-drinking campaign, and that ended as soon as Lenin died and Stalin took complete control of the Soviet Union. Stalin realized that the best way to keep everyone under control was to ramp up alcohol production again entirely and to start pumping that out in mass cheaply to the Russian public. If they kept them drunk, the Soviet government could do whatever they wanted to, and it's been like that ever since. Of course, there was a very small time during Gorbachev's, I guess you could say, reign as premier of the Soviet Union, where they once again tried to prohibit alcohol, but that went poorly, and that was also a very small contributing factor to the collapse of the Soviet Union, is that people started to not be drunk, and then they started to realize, hey, this thing kind of sucks. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. Well, was that even the question, Matthew? Because I feel like we went on a rabbit hole there.
So let's see. That was the question in the chat. So let's see here. The question went to O-Tubes, and it was the question about Russia getting around sanctions to import alcohol.
Oh yeah, so back to that. They mostly produce their own alcohol in-house, so they don't really have to worry about the import of alcohol because they will ensure, even if people are starving, that they have a massive amount of alcohol available cheaply, so that way they can keep them subdued, keep them drunk, and hopefully not keep them revolting, because that's really the only way they can keep that going. It's kind of like opium is to China in the 1830s and 1840s, a massive issue. And so with that, we are now on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news.
And that was actually the last one.
Are you sure?
I am 100% sure.
Oh crap, it was. And so with that, it's now time to get back to the location unknown news, where we can see that the Ukrainians blasted a T-62M, believe it or not, with a Bayraktar. And we can see right there is a T-62. Let me make sure of that. Yeah, it is. And wait a minute, real quick. I just want to make sure. Yeah, it kind of looks like a T-62 right here, Matthew. What do you think? It
could be.
It looks like one. They usually are just on fire every time I see them in pictures, so it has to be a T-62M. We can now see another one go up in flames. We can now see another one. And a lot of people are always asking, where are the Bayraktar? And here they are right here. They're flying. They've been flying around the entire time, hitting Russian targets. And this is one of the few times that we've seen them in operation again on film. And David Branch asked, do you guys get college credit? No, we don't. We don't get college credit for this. But we can see that we're getting some kind of credit because the Ukrainians are obliterating the Russians. And I think the best credit we can get is how much support we've raised for Ukraine. The college credit, that's a small thing in comparison to what the channel's done in support for Ukraine. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip of Location Unknown News. Of course, everyone say hello to the Bayraktar, and that answers the question that many people have as to where are the Bayraktars. Once again, to reiterate, these Bayraktars are a state secret now by the Ukrainian government. They don't allow a lot of information out, and so these videos and this collection, this montage of Russian vehicles destroyed, has most likely been compiled over a massive data bank comprising of months of recorded Bayraktar footage of them hitting Russian targets, and this is a small section of it. So they are still out there, they are still operating, and they are definitely effective, as we can see here on this film. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of news from day 258, where we can see a Javelin in flight during the twilight of the day. It's not really twilight, it's more like getting towards dawn, but you can actually see in this clip the flight path of a Javelin, and it is insane. So here's the video. We see the Javelin flying off, and it will have this little illuminated streak to it the entire time. Look how high it went. It's like 500 yards above the ground. And then, also, this is the craziest thing to see, is how quickly it then descends back towards the ground. It almost makes a 90-degree turn straight back down to hit right on top of the tank, and we can see that right here. And it hits the tank. So, with that, that's the end of the video, and it's very interesting to see how the Javelin flies. It's nuts. It almost takes a straight vertical path upwards, then flies vertically, well, horizontally, and then almost goes straight vertically back down. It's a very impressive weapon system. Of course, it is always effective at its job. We've never seen a Javelin fail yet. And with that, we are now on to the next bit of Location Unknown News, this time from day 259, showing us another Stugna attack. Of course, the Stugna, in terms of its anti-tank guided missile, is not as impressive a flight path as the Javelin, but whatever gets the job done gets the job done. And we can see that the Stugna does as good a job knocking out Russian vehicles as any Javelin can as well. Just like that, it's gone. Also, buddy, let's see. Wait a minute, no, Book Bandit, you just said something that was incredibly true, Matthew. Did you see that? He said the Javelin flies like a Javelin.
Maybe that's why they call it a Javelin.
Maybe that's why they called it a Javelin.
I really don't know the real reason why they call it a Javelin. Maybe I ought to pull that up.
Why? Yeah, let's pull that up. Why do they call the Javelin? Why do they call it a Javelin?
Watch it be an acronym.
Let's see. The word javelin comes from Middle English, and it derives from Old French javelin, a diminutive of javelet, which meant spear. But we're wanting to know about the actual javelin. It's like, we want to know about the javelin. So, replace the M47, but we want to know about the name. Huh, wait a minute, this is interesting. The Javelin is a fire and forget missile with lock-on before launch and automatic self-guidance. The system takes a top-attack flight profile against armored vehicles, attacking the usually thinner top armor, but can also make for a direct attack for use against buildings, targets too close for top attack, targets under obstructions, and helicopters. I think the Ukrainians are going to get some ideas from that one. Hopefully they do it one day. But let's see here. Missile, soft launch range. Okay, yeah, great. But what about the name? We don't care about all the specific details. We want to know the name. Why is it called that? Why is the Javelin... Why do they call it a Javelin ATGM? Why is it named Javelin? I don't think it's going to tell us. Some people say it's for the penetration, but I don't think it would be for that. I think it would... Well, maybe it can be. You might be right, Angry Penguin. But still, it seems like it would seem a little logical to call it a Javelin because it flies like a Javelin. It goes straight up and then comes right back down, almost. But anyways, we're spending too much time on that. We're now going to be moving on into the next clip of news, where we can see a Ukrainian R-18 at work, and it's making its pay, I guess you could say. It's working that 9 to 5, putting in the hours. Also playing the... folk music remix. You see right there the Russian tank go up in flames. We see them dropping another bomblet onto the tank, I believe. Once again going up in flames. And so with that, that's the end of the video, but it's nice to see that the R-18s are doing quite a good job at knocking out Russian vehicles. And of course, huge credit to the drone pilots who've been doing this for almost 260 days, which is unbelievable to think. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see another Ukrainian drone attack occur. Once again, more music. We can see the bomblet on its way. And, oof, it was effective, to say the least. The drone's now zooming out to take a look at the area, and with that, that's the end of the video, but once again, a very interesting look at a very successful drone attack, to say the least. Huge credit to the Ukrainian drone pilots again for helping out the Ukrainian infantry on the ground so effectively. With that, it's now time to go to the very end of the Location Unknown News, which is taking a look at Russian losses. And I gotta tell y'all, they're not looking good again. We can see that the late war number assumption has not died. We can see again that the Russians have taken 710 casualties as of today alone. The casualty report in total has now reached 77,170 troops killed, 2,786 tanks destroyed, 5,654 armored personnel carriers destroyed, 1,791 artillery pieces, 391 MLRSs, 203 anti-aircraft warfare vehicles, 278 planes, 260 helicopters, 16 boats and cutters, 1,476 drones, 159 special equipment vehicles, 4,216 supply trucks and fuel trucks, and 399 cruise missiles. Once again, the three top casualties up here in terms of frontline troops are once again showing that the casualties are climbing and they're not going to be dropping anytime soon. It definitely shows us, based off of this information, that they are in the late war. The equipment they have is poor, the training of their troops are poor, and for that, they're taking a very high amount of casualties. Casualties that can never be replaced at this point, both in terms of manpower and equipment. And because of that, the war cannot go on much longer. It's not just the fact of seeing the sheer numbers and going, wow, those are climbing quite nicely. They're climbing at almost an exponential rate at this point in the war. And for that reason, it's just the war cannot continue to exist. The Russians will soon lose the ability materialistically to keep the war going, not just economically. They're already losing the economic war. Now they're certainly losing the ground war as well. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the location unknowns and out of the location unknowns and into the frontline news itself. So we're now going to be moving into the area of Svatove, where we saw a very interesting butterfly mine, not the butterfly knife being found in the woods. But before we get to this news of the butterfly mines being found, we of course have to take a look at this poll, because a lot of people have been voting on why the Javelin has been called a Javelin. It's only been put up a minute ago, but it's back yet. It looks like we're probably back now.
Maybe.
We are back now. Boy. And I gotta tell you, Matthew, we're probably gonna have to try and figure out something with the internet. Anyways, with that, let's get to the poll.
All right, so real quick, let me grab this super chat before I lose it. Here we go. And that poll says, how do you think a javelin weapon got its name? It looks like 72% said it flies like a javelin. 9% said it's an obscure acronym. 6% said there's no logic behind it. And 13% said none of the above. Now, for me, I would have to go with the majority. I would have to assume that's probably why they call it a javelin, because it flies like one. But there's no telling. I saw some people saying it's like a Greek reference, but I'm not really sure. Enforcer, what do you think?
I'm going to have to say it probably is for the reason that it flies like a javelin. There's historical precedent for things to just be called something off of a characteristic. Like, let me remind y'all of probably the two best examples I can think of off the top of my head that everyone will probably know about. The B-17 Flying Fortress. This was America's not really frontline, strategic bomber during the Second World War in the European campaign. Now, it's not called the Flying Fortress because of, I guess you could say, some advanced acronym or anything. And actually, the story of this one's pretty funny, Matthew. When Boeing designed this B-17 and the prototypes were making their way around the country, a reporter looked at this thing and said, holy hell, it looks like a flying fortress. And then everyone was like, hey, that's a good one. And then it just stuck. And that's how this plane got the name Flying Fortress. Sometimes in America, it is the case that vehicles and equipment and weaponry sometimes just get their names because of what they do. And this thing looks like a flying fortress. It's bristling with machine guns. Honestly, it was probably one of the best defended bombers of the Second World War that was used in the European campaign or the European theater. And so, for that reason, go ahead.
I got to say, I really like the chrome like paint job on it. It's like really, really cool looking.
Oh, I know. I love the chrome. The army green. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the army green's okay, but I really love the chrome ones. The chrome ones, they just got style. And of course, there's the B-29 Super Fortress, which is just, not really an improvement on the B-17. It was a completely different plane, but it was really improving on the same kind of strategic bomber concept. And if you're talking about chrome, oh, buddy, these things were made of nothing but chrome. They're really cool looking.
Yeah, it is pretty nice.
Also, quick fun fact for some of y'all who may not know, although I feel like this is one of the most well-known facts about the B-29 Super Fortress, the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars is based directly off of the B-29's cockpit.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'll show y'all real quick. I hope that, we can show this because we're talking directly about the content. So, the Millennium Falcon, let me show y'all this. Right over here, the cockpit directly based off of a B-29.
Interesting.
Really cool. And so with that, we are now on to the next poll. And I would have to go for that reason off of the idea that they're calling it Javelin, most likely because it flies like a javelin. And so with that, on to the next poll.
All right. And the second poll said, do you think Russia is still keeping the vodka flowing to keep the population from a revolution? It looks like 80% said yes, it keeps them drunk and immobile. 8% said maybe, and 12% said no, they just adore vodka. Now, I'd have to say it's a combo of the first and third options. That's honestly kind of sick to think that a government would provide vodka to keep them immobile, but that's apparently what they're doing. But also they do actually adore vodka quite a bit. But Enforcer, what do you think?
Well, I would honestly have to say that's not really. It's a bizarre way to do it. It's a really sick way to do it in a way. But and I gotta say this in a little bit of a defense. almost every country in history does something to keep everyone a little distracted from what's going on. You know, with Rome, it was panem and circe, which is bread and circuses. You know, pretty much, I guess you could say, the modern equivalent of some football and some beer in the United States. Every country, I guess you could say, has some way of recreation and to keep people entertained in a way, so that way the crushing, I guess you could say, fear of reality doesn't fall on everyone. But in Russia, because of the lack of infrastructure and also the lack of, I guess you could say, any kind of meaningful wealth beyond the very upper elites of Russia, they don't really have the ability to run a sport game or anything similar, and so they just give everyone some hardcore alcohol. I guess you could say that is almost on the line of drugs at this point in Russia to keep everyone entertained and, I guess you could say, out of mind in terms of what's really going on and how they're living. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, but it's entirely for the reason, I would have to say, to answer the poll, it's entirely for the reason of keeping them under control. It's not because they like alcohol, it's because there's nothing else to do, and the only way to keep themselves from just, you know, offing themselves in such a miserable place is to just get drunk. You can kind of see that in places in America, like I guess you could say the Midwest, like Wyoming, and also I guess you could say really in the Midwest and Alaska, where the population is so sparsely dense and also there's so little to do in some of these places that people just pass the time by drinking. And so with that, I hope that does answer that poll fairly well, and we are now on to the next one.
All right, so that was the last poll. So we're moving on to our questions. And first up, we have another super chat from ChipCur1, who this time puts in a $55 donation. He says, "We refuse to falsely empower Putin with fake loose nuke chatter. Assume you correct. Russia got 0 punch left per troops or arms. Don't you think Russia can still crush Ukraine with missiles and bombs? What left in terms of Russian jets, tanks, and missiles?"
And very good question. Also, thank you so much once again for the support. And let's see, Russia got 0 punch left. They really do. They're still able to amass an armed force, but is it really an armed force? I mean, you know, like if you really look at that, that's not an armed force. And that thing is a hodgepodge now of obsolete equipment and poorly trained men. And so in that regard, that's completely correct. They've lost their ability to punch. What they have left, it largely seems that they're losing the remainder of their modern equipment, what little that's left, and they're now entirely relying on older Cold War equipment. They will most likely have enough of that to see them through the entirety of the war, but by the end of it, if we're looking at it ending by next summer, they'll probably have very little of that as well, and by that point, the Russian army may as well be ineffective. So, to answer don't you think Russia can still crush Ukraine with missiles and bombs? No, it appears as well, based off of the numbers we have, the publicly available numbers, that they're running out of cruise and ballistic missiles as well. There's only so many of those left, and it appears to be in the several hundred, somewhere around 300 or 400 of them, and once they fire off all of those missiles as well, they're done. It's just not really going, there's nowhere for them to go. They fire off all those missiles, they can't produce anymore due to the crippling sanctions, and that's it. They're going to have to rely entirely on that point on the Russian armed forces to try and carry them through, or at least help them to survive through the rest of the war. So in that regard, I don't think the Russians really have a way or any kind of attempt, a fleeting attempt, to try and turn the war into their favor or destroy Ukraine and win. It's practically impossible at this point. They've, and if they did have that ability at the start of the war, they've idled so long that they can't go and turn it around anymore because they don't have the other half of the military to turn it around with, or the other half of their missiles to turn it around with as well. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again, Chip, for the support and helping this channel to stay alive. Of course, our viewers are the only way, and through y'all's support, that we keep this channel running day by day. And I gotta thank y'all all so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to stay alive. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $35 super chat from Avari Mandubratis, who says, "My worry in Kherson City is that the Russians are turning city streets into massive killing zones like in Mosul after ISIS had fortified it, and even Okinawa when the U.S. landed in World War II. Plus, I expect Russia has human shields."
And I thank you so much once again for the support. And also, to address that, is there any way, Matthew, that you could send that in the live chat as a text box? I think that might be a good way to go forward to make sure that I can read them and address all parts of them, because it's very hard to remember everything in all of our comments. So can you just put that in the live chat real quick?
So it's actually too many characters to go in the live chat, but I can reread it, and also I'm going to also let you read them from there.
Got you. So let's hear it one more time.
So Avari said, my worry in Kherson City is that the Russians are turning city streets into massive killing zones like in Mosul after ISIS had fortified it, and even Okinawa when the U.S. landed in World War II. Plus, I expect Russia has human shields.
And thank you so much once again for the support of our Avari Mandubratis, and I bet we're both butchering that again, and I'm sorry about that. But looking at Kherson, there is a massive disadvantage. If we go, for example, and look at Mosul, and if I'm correct in this statement, whether I am or not, it's another question, but let me try and find Mosul. Mosul. Are you kidding me? Have I forgot where Mosul is? I think I have. I'm going to have to type it in. I'm sorry, everyone. I used to know where Mosul was. Well, what do you know? It's right in front of my face. Great job, me. So, if we look at Mosul, Mosul is a city that's on both sides of the Tigris River. And so you could set up killing zones, and you could keep control of the city and also supply it, because as long as you held around the river, you could supply both sides. However, in Kherson, the city is entirely on one side of the river. And so if they want to defend Kherson, and if they want to create killing zones, they're going to have to supply it from one side, and it's going to have to be exactly beside the Antonovsky Bridge, because the rest of this is a marsh, and the idea of building any kind of infrastructure where they can pass through that and then supply Kherson is almost unthinkable in a practicable circumstance. And on top of that, if they tried to build a road through this marsh, it is going to be so visible that the Ukrainians would already have it, I guess you could say, pre-locked in, artillery-wise, just continuously barrage it to make sure that no supplies can make their way down to the end, be unloaded onto a barge, and then sent across to the Russian forces in Kherson. That would be a massive undertaking, also a massive hindrance for the defenders of Kherson. And so while they probably can set up kill zones, those kill zones would be pretty much a last-ditch attempt at trying to hold the city for another few weeks at best. They wouldn't be able to supply it for long, and it wouldn't hold up for long. On top of that, with Ukraine's ability, unlike the Iraqis at the time in Mosul, to use drones to specifically spot out these kill zones. For example, if we look at a street here, and we try and find an end to it, let's say right here, and also, you scared the hell out of me there for a second.
You have a delivery, sir.
Thank you. So let me grab this real quick. If we look at this road, for example, and let's say that there is a building right here at the end of this road, and Ukrainian forces are down here. They walk out, boom, 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 machine gun hits them, they run back into cover, and then they call in an artillery strike exactly on that building, or they send a drone, a kamikaze drone, or a drone with a bomblet, to start dropping bomblets onto that building, and then the Russians would have no option but to retreat. So, with all of that in mind, I think the kill zones would be quite difficult to set up in Kherson due to the lack of supplies from one side of the river, because unlike Mosul, it would be incredibly difficult, most likely, to supply forces there without some kind of a massive effort to defend the outskirts of the city well outside of the limits of Kherson, and also due to the Ukrainians' massive use of drones, both for recon and also for offensive purposes. The Russians most likely wouldn't be able to keep these kill zones alive for long. But still, it is a pretty good point. And if it was the case, the Ukrainians could probably just besiege the city and attack the supply lines leading into it and starve out the Russians. And although, unfortunately, that would most likely lead to a lot of civilian deaths, which the Ukrainians would most likely try to avoid, that is an option. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support of Ari, and also a very interesting comment. And while I don't believe that it would be the case if the Battle of Kherson was to happen soon, it still could be, and it is a good point. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support of Ari. I hope I addressed that comment fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and the next one, which I believe is the last one of the segment, goes to Ironhide, who puts in a $28 donation and says, "Greetings from Latvia. Thank you for your efforts to support Ukraine and technically Europe, because if Ukraine wins, The whole free world does as well. And also grab a question from the live chat.
And thank you so much, Ironhide. Also, cool name, Matthew. That's a pretty cool one, Ironhide.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You know, that sounds like the name of a British ship in the First World War, like the HMS Ironhide. Honestly, I think that would be a good name to name a ship from here forward. But anyways, moving on from that. Let's see. Thank you for greetings from Latvia. Ah, dang it, you didn't say where in Latvia you're from, but we will drop down in Latvia real quick just to take a look. So let's go to Riga. So we'll drop down in Riga. Neat city. In case y'all didn't know, Riga is in the world version of Monopoly the most expensive property. In case y'all didn't know. So let's see. Oh, it does look pretty nice. This is a nice town. Oh, look at that. This is a nice town. I
That's
like
pretty nice.
Yeah,
and what part of Europe is this again?
This is Riga in Latvia.
Huh.
And remember, Matthew, Riga is that top property on the international version of Monopoly that you and me would kill for. Yeah. And I honestly,
I remember.
I can see why they made it that. It looks like a really nice place. Also, really nice little entrance to what appears to be a park over here. Nice. I don't know if you're from Riga, but still pretty cool. Moving on from that, and to address the comment itself, instead of just looking at Latvia for too long, and let me get back to it. Let's see here. I forgot, Matthew. I actually have the giant board in front of me now that shows me this. And I thank you so much for enjoying the efforts of our channel to support Ukraine. I consider it to be what is owed by this channel, as if we're going to be covering the war in Ukraine, we should also be supporting the people that we are covering as far as their story. It would seem to be incredibly one-sided and also very sick to report on the war and then do nothing to help out the people that we're talking about, their stories, their hardships, like the Battle of the Five Men, all of the people we've seen attacked by the Russians. I feel like it wouldn't be right if we didn't support them, and I thank you so much for enjoying this, that this channel does this. And so let's see, because if Ukraine wins, the whole free world. That is also true as well. And I would have to say that they are really defending the entire Western sphere, and specifically the eastern part of that sphere as well, because the Russians have already made it clear that their ambitions go beyond just Ukraine. It goes into the Baltics and Poland as well, and maybe even Finland. And so in those regards, that is also true. And I thank you so much once again for agreeing with us on that. And so real quick, we're going to honor your request and take a live chat. And so with that, what do we got for a live chat, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat question goes to I Am Gift Bearer, who's a longtime channel viewer, by the way, who says, do you think that after Zelenskyy spoke with Israel asking for military assistance to defend its skies, that they'll actually get the Iron Dome systems?
I don't think they will. While the Israelis appear to be taking a little bit of a turn in terms of support for Ukraine, we have not seen any meaningful or any support at all coming out of Israel, and they would most likely step their way up to that system by sending a few smaller weapons or weapon systems at first, and then finally sending over the Iron Dome. On top of that, Iron Domes are incredibly rare and incredibly expensive to field and use. The Israelis have an incredibly small amount of them, and they also rotate them from positions, because even while there's a small amount of them in their fairly small country, they still don't cover an incredibly large area. They also are used primarily and almost only for shooting down smaller, I guess you could say, weaponry, like grad rockets, mortar fire, and things like that. So they most likely won't send it based off of what we're seeing right now, but hopefully that will change and we will see them send the Iron Domes into Ukraine, because I'm sure that it would help in some places, like, for example, Pokrovsk, Zaporizhia, or anywhere around the front lines in Kherson. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, Ironhide, because that was actually a really good one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was the last one of the segment.
All right. Interesting. That's weird, Matthew. It feels like we're flying through them at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It doesn't feel like we're answering 3 of them. It feels like we're answering like 1. But with that, I thank you all once again for some incredible questions and also sponsoring live chats. And with that, we're now going to be moving into the area around Svatove, where we can see that butterfly mines have been found by the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians are just going through and picking them up and putting them into a small plastic bag. And we can see that right here.
Пойду им назад отдам.
Да, сейчас закидаем.
And it's very interesting to see these little things, and if we type them in, you can get a better look at what a butterfly mine is. This is a PFM1 butterfly mine. These things are called a butterfly because they kind of look like one, although I think it's a little bit of a stretch.
Really? I would say.
Yeah. Anyways, these little things are anti-personnel mines, meaning that they their job is to kill people, not vehicles. So if you step on this thing, it's kind of like a toe popper. It will explode, and it will probably take your foot or part of your leg with it. You can also see that they come in different colors. We can see an orange one, a white one that looks like it's kind of made out of plastic, and a green one, which is the one that the Ukrainians are picking up, which appears to also be called the Uber. This is the Uber butterfly. I'm just kidding. We don't know a lot. I've got to be honest with y'all. I don't know a lot about butterfly mines, but that is what they look like if you were to take one out of that bag and just take a quick look at it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to the next clip, and it's very interesting to see that those things are now being found behind the lines. They look quite small, and their color being green, they might be hard to see on the ground, and so hopefully the Ukrainians can clean those up before any civilians start taking hikes through the woods again and end up stepping on one. With that, we're now going to be moving further down the front line in the northeast, where we can see that the 25th Brigade was hitting the Russians fairly well. And you all know when I say fairly well, that actually means completely. It's 100% accuracy. But you see the first round hitting a Russian vehicle right there in the tree line, and now it's becoming a small fireworks show. When you see the vehicle continuing to burn, and we can see that the Ukrainians, what's very, very nice to me, and I find this to be a great courtesy from the Ukrainians, Matthew, is that unlike Russians, who will show something explode and then they'll never show you the after effect, the Ukrainians will keep a drone flying for what seems to be like 4 hours, showing you this vehicle's lifespan from just freshly burning all the way to a charred crisp.
Yes, and also the Russians don't have anything to show either, so that's part of the reason.
They don't have anything to show, like when they showed that decoy being hit, and they cut off immediately afterwards because they immediately realized it was a decoy.
Yes.
We see this one having a little flare flying off, and with that, that's the end of the video, and it's nice to see that the 25th Brigade is still destroying Russian forces on that part of the front line. Moving on down, however, and into the area of Lysychansk, we've seen something really interesting, and this here is raw, unmitigated Russian propaganda. Now, real quick, now that it's saying that, it did not say that earlier. Let me pull it off screen, and let me take a look at this to make sure that that is not the case. So I remember watching this whole video. Okay, so apparently I must just be desensitized to this stuff, because now that I'm looking through it, I can kind of see where it would be marked at, but we are only going to show the parts leading up to it. We're not going to show that part of this clip. If you do want to see that, the link is in the description below. They show some stuff happening that I can't really describe on stream. But I want y'all to see what the Russians are saying, as in how this war is going. And so with that, here's the clip.
Войска сбивают наступательный пыл. Формирование киевского режима.
Also, I like how this guy must be the child of Patrick Lancaster, because watch him once the MLRS fires, Matthew. Look at that little jump. He was about to run.
He's fighting the urge.
Yeah, he's fighting the urge to run. He's about to sit there and get on that little nerdy voice and go, hi guys, Patrick Lancaster here, and we're on the front. Oh, he's about to start doing that.
Лесопосадки и поля возле Северска и бьют по плацдармам боевиков для атаки на Лисичанск. Не дают пройти вперед. Между Северском...
Wait, what was that last little comment? They don't let the Ukrainians get ahead. Well, what about all this? What about all this area in gray? What about that? I thought that they were. I'm totally wrong. In fact, the Russians have held the front line everywhere. The Ukrainians have never made an inch of ground. Never.
Like he thinks talking louder and faster is gonna make him like a fearless.
Yeah, at the beginning he was like, "We are here on the front lines, and the Russians are obliterating the Ukrainians, and they're not gonna make any." He's like doing that, man. He had to take a minute to compose himself right there.
Грады в лесопосадки и поля возле Северска и бьют по плацдармам боевиков для атаки на Лисичанск. Не дают пройти вперед. Между Северском и Лисичанском войска с обеих сторон накопили большие силы. Личный состав, техника. Вот боевики бьют из американского Хаймерса.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Here are the militants. Like they're just some kind of terrorist rebel force or something. It's not like an official organized army, according to this guy. It's just a band of dudes out in the woods, you know, shooting at him. That's it. This guy has got some really loaded language. I mean, we are a pro-Ukrainian channel, so we do, of course, say very positive things about Ukraine. But this right here is almost like that typical comedy crap that you would see about the proletariat overthrowing the bourgeoisie. It's almost worded like that.
Американского Хаймерса. В атаку летят наши штурмовики, позже появляются вертолеты противника.
Some of them are probably supplied by the West.
Какие-то из них, вероятно, поставлены Западом. Много и восстановленной старой списанной техники.
And I love, oh my god, man, dude. Look at this one. This is gotta be the funniest one. A lot of old and decommissioned equipment has been restored.
Was that like a good thing?
I mean, is he saying that about Ukraine after we've seen that the entire Russian armored force is now made up of tanks from the 60s?
Yeah, really?
I mean, come on.
То, что здесь свежие силы, их здесь много, это факт. Если мы сейчас засядем просто в глухую оборону и ничего не будем делать, то...
A dead-end defense.
Yeah, a dead-end defense.
That's ironic.
And now he says the Russian army will do nothing. Then the enemy will concentrate their forces and strike. That sounds like losing talk right there. That sounds like something a German, like, SS soldier would have said in 1944 and 45. Oh, we're winning the war. If we just sit here and try and hold the ground and they attack us and we hold it, we're winning, guys. Like, come on.
Нам приходится их разбивать, чтобы просто...
And I love how he sits there and says, we're going to do nothing. And then he says, we must not let them rest. We must exhaust them. But how are you doing that if you're doing nothing? It sounds like they're exhausting y'all and wearing y'all down instead, and you're just trying to word it in a nice way.
Для того, чтобы они ротировались, вводили новые силы, свежие силы, не давать им отдыхать, изнурять.
Артиллерия не смолкает, боевики перемещаются по опорному пункту.
And now this is the part of the video we cannot show, but I wanted to show y'all a quick little clip of some crazy Russian propaganda and what they're telling the public over there. And it's just insane to see what kind of links they'll go to lie and just make the story look cheery, although they're losing massive amounts of ground and hundreds of soldiers, nearly 1,000 soldiers a day at this point. With that, we're now going to be moving south of Lysychansk and towards the area of Spernay, where we saw the real reality for Russian soldiers as this APC and a BMP-1 were destroyed. And so with that, here's the video. We can hear some nice news music playing, and we can see the Ukrainians showing a burning BTR and what appears to be some Russian soldiers? Let me check this caption here real quick. Oh, wait a minute. This is actually Russian footage of apparently Ukrainian positions being hit, because I saw that right there. It said VSU, which is something similar to Ukrainian armed forces. We now see the artillery hitting, and it looks like it hit near or onto that BTR we saw burning earlier, and is now caught on fire and continues to burn. We now see the artillery hit somewhere close to the tree line again, but I did not see a Ukrainian foxhole there or an APC. You can see that the BMP is continuing to smoke. It appears to be a smoldering fire. We can see that there is another BMP in the tree line. It appears that there are no Ukrainian crews. Actually, real quick, we're going to get off that because it appears that there was. And with that, that's the end of that little clip. But that shows you the situation around Spernay. And of course, while it looks like there may have been some losses there. The Ukrainians are still holding the line in this area, and of course inflicting a pretty high amount of casualties, as we can see, of course, on the casualty report. And also, if we move down into the area of Vulhedar and Bakhmut, you will see that the Ukrainian tanks are still on the move, and of course defending the area. And so here's a quick clip of the Ukrainians moving their T-80s forward. When you see here 2 Ukrainian T-80s moving forward, it's some pretty high speed, and also, the suspension handles it quite well. See this guy moving on a parallel road as well. And I gotta say, I'm really impressed, Matthew, with tank suspension, even on these older Soviet-era tanks, that they handle these dirt roads quite well. It's just like it's like a 1970s car in terms of how like they bounce around.
Yeah, and it's mainly because of the sheer weight. They're so heavy, like it's hard for a bump to really affect it that bad.
Like a 1970s Cadillac.
Yes, like it's so heavy, just like a tank. Like literally, like the old saying goes, like a tank straight over the bump.
Yeah, and so that's the end of that clip, but once again, interesting to see Ukrainian tanks on the move in the area. Moving even further on down into the Bakhmut region itself, we can see some Russian troops being hit by a little bit of Ukrainian fire, particularly by a Stugna. And so here's the video. When you see the Stugna lining up its crosshairs, we can also see what appears to be a Russian APC on the move, although it's so far away we can hardly tell what it's like. We can now hear some Pac-Man music starting up as the Stugna is now traveling on its way. It's about to slam right into the side of this APC. I'm assuming it's most likely a BTR, although it could also be a BMP. And boom goes the dynamite, and the APC was taken out. And so with that, that's the end of the video. And I gotta say right there, that APC was going so slow, we gotta be entirely certain Tony was not driving that one. A little too slow. Although it still didn't end up doing anything good for them, they still bit the dust. Moving on into the area of Bakhmut, however, we can see that the Ukrainians, from some footage taken, I'm assuming, days ago, of Ukrainian forces in the area defending Bakhmut. And so here's a video from a Ukrainian soldier of what the Battle of Bakhmut currently looks like. See the Ukrainian inside the house. It appears that he hasn't fired it yet, but we can hear fire outside. Now see him looking through the stairwell. We can see a soldier below.
Брат, насыпь с окна, я на третий, пожалуйста. Насыпь с окна, я на третий.
You now see him moving up the staircase. And if I recall, I remember someone running up a staircase before just a couple of days ago, and I think this is actually old footage that appears to be new, at least a little, because it showed a part of the clip that we didn't see at the start of the last one. So unfortunately, this is a little clip of old news. Sorry about that. We're now going to be moving on in behind Bakhmut to check out a Ukrainian RM-70 firing its rockets onto Russian lines. So with that, here's the video of the RM-70. Man, someone's really enjoying that. Listen to that.
That guy has to be yelling like he's blowing out his vocal cords to like be able to be picked up on a mic.
Man, that man's scream is heard 20 miles away. He's like the Krakatoa. You just hear in the distance, you know, like a little quiet, boom, boom, and then you hear, ah! It's just like miles away. But it's still a huge credit to this guy for having a high level of morale, and also very nice to see the Ukrainian RM-70s are still in the area of Bakhmut and helping the Ukrainian infantry to hold the lines. Most likely one of the reasons why the casualties have been so high for the Russians is that Ukrainian artillery has been dead on accurate, hitting Russian movements in this area and other parts of the front line as well. So with that, we have not seen any major frontline changes in the area of Bakhmut. It appears that the front lines are completely stagnant in this area, mostly because the Russians are conducting an offensive and the Ukrainians are now on the defensive, and they're holding the lines quite well. So it appears at the moment that the Ukrainians are winning that battle. Moving on down into the Donetsk region, we can also see that on day 259, some more Ukrainian artillery was hitting some more Russian soldiers. Also, everyone keeps on saying that that song that was played in that other video was some kind of Rammstein or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't know a lot of music. It sounded kind of like Pac-Man music, so I went with it, but it's not really that close. Anyways, with that...
I mean, the polls saying 25% Pac-Man.
I mean, well, that's hardly nothing. I mean, like, that's nothing.
I mean, 25% of the people disputed Rammstein. I don't even really know what Rammstein is. I've never heard of it. People are about to roast me for that.
Yeah, I'm sadly, everyone, I've never really heard of Rammstein. Of course, a lot of y'all know I'm not really a lot into modern pop culture at all, whether it be sports, celebrities, movies, or anything like that. So sadly, I don't know what Rammstein is. But here's this video of Ukrainian artillery being incredibly accurate. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
We're about to go to a rave in 2012. And now we can see the artillery landing right on top of those Russians, and onto other locations where Russians may be. Now we can see the Russians on the run. Once again, going for the 5K marathon. We now see the artillery hitting them where they are. We can now see them running towards the worst thing imaginable. The predator of the Russian army. The killer of tanks. The stealer of your what the whip? Is that what it's called, Matthew?
The whip, like what are you referring to again?
Like a car, you know, like the car, like, you know, like the other acronym.
Wait,
for
what?
car. Like, is it like isn't the saying for a car a whip?
Oh, you mean like slang, like
Yeah.
a whip?
Yeah, like
Oh
slang
yeah,
for-
yeah. You mean like hopping in the whip?
Yeah, the stealer of whips, the Ukrainian tractor. We can see they're running right by one. They don't even know the presence of the true terror they're in front of. And now we can see the artillery hitting right near where they are, and right near the tractor right there. And the tractor watches on as the Ukrainians keep on raining down the fire on these pitiful Russians. And with that, that's the end of the video, but it is nice to see that the Ukrainians have made sure to keep the tractors in range so that way they can watch and reminisce on the early days of the war when they were stealing tanks, and now they're stealing Russian souls. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on. Now,
that was a dope whip.
I mean, anyways.
Man, that wimp was fire.
Wimp?
Whip.
You just said a wimp. You said, dang.
That whip was fire.
We're moving on into the next clip where you see a Russian tank being finished off. Huh, okay. Interesting music selection. We can see the Russian tank right there being hit by a Ukrainian tank once. We can see those already appearing to be on fire a little bit. We see that it's still burning quite nicely. And it looks like it's already bitten the dust. But the Ukrainians double tapped the thing. Huge credit to America in the late 2000s and early 2010s for coming up with the double tap, as it appears the Ukrainians are now using it as well on the front lines and making sure that Russian tanks stay down once they're put down. With that, That's the end of the clip, and it's nice to see that all across the Donetsk lines, the Russians are still taking some losses. However, it appears that a Ukrainian BMP driver lost his dignity today as he stalled a BMP at a red light. I can't play the music, but this right here, this little jerk at the very beginning of the video, is him stalling the BMP. And then he starts looking around, he's like, oh no. When you see this guy looking around like, I can't believe this. This guy's like, wait a minute, hang on, I can recover it. And he recovers it.
Just floor it. Just floor the
He's
thing.
like, just
and
floor
dump
it.
the clutch.
Yeah, he's like, just floor it. It's almost a red light. Just go, man. Come on. And, of course, a little funny to see. Of course, it's a little bit of a gaffe, but still pretty funny that someone stalled a BMP. And you can see the guy kind of, like, visibly panic as he starts looking around in the driver's cab. He's like, uh-oh. He's like, I need to restart this thing now. I like that jerk and how this guy almost gets flung forward on the tank.
Yes.
And then he looks over like, what the hell, man? But anyways, with that, that's the end of that clip. And it's a funny thing to see that a BMP was stalled. Anyways, moving on into Marinka, we can see that Ukrainian forces have been holding the line incredibly well against the Russian onslaught in this area as well. Of course, huge credit to Radio Free Europe for providing this clip.
Мы сейчас движемся в сторону Донецкого направления. Это один из самых горячих участков фронта. Там оборону держат украинские десантники из 79-й бригады.
Офіцера зняв, він такий.
Ситуація, скажімо, не одна з найкращих, тому що на Донецький напрямок Російська Федерація кинула не просто мобілізованих, тут багато з ЧВК «Вагнер» працюють, інших спецпідрозділів, які намагаються прощупати нашу оборону, прорвати її.
That's a hell of a voice, by the way.
I know, I was thinking about saying something about it, but this guy sounds like the Ukrainian version of Sam Elliott.
He sounds like Lil Wayne.
Lil Wayne? Who's that?
Yes.
Who's
A
Lil
rapper.
Wayne? Oh, I've never heard of him, actually.
He sounds just like him.
I mean, like, maybe they're relatives.
Намагаються прощупати нашу оборону, прорвати її.
Вогонь артилерії – це, в першу чергу, психологічна зброя. Тобто важко з міномета чи з ствольної артилерії попасти прямо в окоп. Але вплинути на психіку військовослужбовця, який знаходиться в цьому окопі, можна, навіть якщо снаряд впаде в 15 метрах чи в 20 метрах, вплив на її стресостійкість, на тому, чи вона зможе це витримати.
Відстань до техніки. Плюс прийняв укриття.
Только что разведка заметила российский танк, который сейчас стреляет по позициям украинских десантников. Сейчас можно за картиной боя понаблюдать из безпілотника.
Буде вирізатися, там буде братися не так же багато.
Перепрошую, то таке вже знаєте.
Ні, це...
Да. Ось довтікає.
There he is again.
Так противник турбуючим вогнем починає відволікати увагу з одної сторони позицій, а на інших вже може піти в штурм піхотою або бронетехнікою.
Результату їм це не дає, тому що, ще раз повторюю, грамотна робота нашої артилерії, грамотне коригування нашої артилерії зі сторони нашої піхоти, воно відсікає всі ці можливості просуватися їм вперед.
Піхота, якщо йде без бронетехніки.
That fellow was young.
You know, this is like a massive difference. This is like the complete opposites. Like you have like a higher pitched voice. He has,
Voice cracks.
Yeah, he's having a couple of voice cracks. Then you got Vin Diesel over here. You know, just in there, we're family. Like, it's like, good lord. Like, you couldn't get two totally different voices in a single clip, but you got to give them both credit. Because while they're completely opposite in terms of how they sound, and completely opposite in terms of how they look, this man looks like a somewhat older man. The other guy, he looks almost like he's younger than you and me, Matthew. Both of them are out there defending the front lines at Marinka. They've been there for quite some while and look like they're both battle-hardened.
Скажем, наші хлопці з нею справляються на раз-два. Коли вже багато бронетехніки і багато піхоти, звісно, хлопцям тяжче, але справляються.
Nice foregrip.
And with that, that is the end of that little clip. And it's nice to see that the 79th Paratrooper Brigade is holding the town of Marinka from the Russians. Of course, the Russians have been continuously trying to push out this area. It is one of the most active areas in the front line in terms of, I guess you could say, how much the Russians try and push. But there's never really a lot of video evidence to report from this area. And also, there is so little ground, if not any ground, made each and every day that this front line almost always appears stagnant. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of the Donetsk region and into the southern front, where for the first time ever, we've seen a massive amount of activity occurring around the area of Pavlivka and Vulhedar. We've seen the Battle of the Five Men, but we have never seen the death of 1,000 Russians. And in these next few clips on day 258, I'm going to show you 3 entirely separate convoys, it appears, that were destroyed one by Ukrainian forces defending the towns of Vulhedar, Pavlivka, and Yahorivka. And so here's the first video of a Russian column being destroyed. Gotta mute that. It's folk music, but I'm sure it's copyrighted. You see the Russian column moving forward across the field. See them now moving through a tree line. Once again, in a nice, beautiful, long convoy. Oh my gosh, Matthew. I just, real quick, everyone.
Did you see that?
I've seen a super chat come in. It's entirely in Japanese. That is the coolest thing ever. Like I gotta say.
Guess where I'm going right now?
Google Translate. And also, I thank you, real quick, everyone. I thank you so much for the support. And that has gotta be, and I'm assuming that you can understand English because you're watching the stream, and I want to let you know that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen anyone put in a super chat in their own language, and I find Japanese to be incredibly cool. And so with that, we're going to make sure to translate both your name and the message so that way we can read it and answer it. And thank you so much once again. And also thank you to all of our Lee Spring Army members who were from the beautiful country of Japan. And so with that, we're now going to be watching the rest of this video. Well, you see the first tank run into a mine. We now see the entire column come to a stop. We now see the artillery picking off the tanks one by one, and it looks like they just cannot win. Also, he responded, man, he said LOL.
Yes, I saw that. And I just got done translating it too.
Oh my, wait a minute, did you see that? This first tank, Matthew, got the short end of every stick. So let's watch this again. Let's just watch the sequence of what happened to the first tank in this convoy. It gets hit by artillery. It continues to move forward somehow through just pure luck. It's got a small fire happening on the side, and then, right when it looks like it's all over, you can see an ATGM streaking across the field, which then hits it again. We see it still rolling forward, and then a third ATGM comes in and hits it, and knocks it on out. Oh my lord. We now see the Russians walking off in defeat after looking at what's the left of this convoy that's been completely wiped out. We now see them all hitting the deck as artillery lands nearby again. And with that, that's the end of the video, and I gotta say, that was a wild one from start to finish. Also, I like how the Ukrainians just took complete control over that one tank, and they're like, no, you're not making it through. We don't care how many artillery shells we have to land on that tank or ATGMs we have to fire. We're taking that thing out. And so with that, we're moving on into the next clip, where we can see a T-80B VM hit in this area, and it appears that the Russian crew abandoned it immediately after being hit. And so, here's the video. When you see the tank is already a smoldering mess as we hear some kind of trap remix in the background. The tank has now come to a complete stop. Its buddy is about to run it over. And we now see the commander crawling out of the hatch first, of course, setting the example in leadership, always the first to go. We now see the gunner also climbing out of his hatch as well. And we have not seen the driver leave yet, but we do see the driver on the road. He apparently did get out at some point. And we can now see the other T-80 BVM trying to move beyond the burning one and moving forward at a pretty high speed.
Sped up?
Say what?
Is it sped up?
It's not sped up. That's actually at normal speed.
That thing was hauling.
That thing was hauling. They're ripping the transmission apart in that thing for sure. And some of that, that's the end of the video. And I gotta say, Matthew, those guys are playing Fast and Furious or something inside their heads to be having that tank going that fast. Like, that
I didn't know
was
they could
fast.
accelerate that quickly.
Let's watch that again. Oh, I like how he runs into the Connex box as well. So he gets around that tank, and that guy just mashes the pedal. Like, that thing's going at like 30 miles an hour already. And so with that, that's the end of the video, and you can see how freaked out the Russian forces got in that one clip, as also with their tank, a massive ball of fire. Moving on into our last clip from day 258, we saw some more Russian tanks also being destroyed in the area as well. Also, Georgia Tony was probably driving. And so, here's the last clip of another Russian convoy being destroyed. Once again, more music playing. We can see the Russian tank moving down the line. It appears to be a T-72B3. Ooh! There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Look at that. The guy who destroyed the tank was right there in the tree line in the trench. He just popped over the top and fired it off and took the tank out.
Nice.
Nice. Look at that. A nice hit right to the side of the tank. Most likely a disabling hit. We can now see it being hit a second time right there. We can now see the tanks ablaze. The crew has not abandoned it yet at that moment because the turret was still moving. We can see what appears to be two Russian BMPs now moving down the line, most likely to try and support that tank. One of them just got blown away. Oh my gosh.
It was like a little rat. Pew, boom.
Oh, goodness. I mean, like, the Ukrainians, where did that one come from as well? I don't even know where that one came from in particular, but we can now see that one now being a piece on the field. When you see all the vehicles that have been destroyed abandoned, and in slightly worse condition than when they arrived. We now see the artillery taking out the last BMP, and with that, that's the end of the video, and I gotta say, right on, Tony. Right on. Tony's driving everyone to their deaths down in southern Ukraine, and I gotta give him a huge credit. I think he's doing more to end the war for Russia than the Ukrainians are doing. With that, we're now going to be moving to our last bit of news from this area in Vulhedar, Plovdivka, and Yakharivka here on day 259, where we saw another Russian column being repelled today. And so with that, here's the clip. When you see them moving forward under some decent artillery fire, under some fields that appear to be no man's land in World War I. Ooh! Artillery shell landed right on top of one of them, and it just had an ammo detonation. We can see one brave guy, he is bit and determined on doing the death speed run here, as he's now beaten off the beaten path, and he's now making his own. Now, that doesn't seem too dangerous on the surface, but what if there's mines out here? He's going to be the first to find out. Texas Ling led something wrong. He said, "Holy smokes!" And I gotta agree, that thing was smoking. The convoy is continuing to try and move forward, but it's down one vehicle. You can't even see it. It appears that it's vaporized.
Like they're moving out across Mars or something.
Yeah, or the moon. And so with that, that's the end of that video. And you can see right there that the Russians still have very limited success trying to attack the 3 villages here that they had yesterday as well, and also the 2 days before. With that, we're now going to be moving down to the area of Huilopol, where we saw some snipers at work. You see, usually, I know a lot of y'all are used to seeing snipers at work. They usually work a 9-to-5 job. They're very hard-working people, and we can see one at work right here. Hey, welcome, Adam. I just saw you finally made it. You can see the sniper looking at the Russian. He fires. He fires again. Oh, wait a minute. Does he have a semi-automatic gun? Wow, this guy's just laying it out. And the Russian's gone. And so with that, that's the end of the video. And I gotta say, if this guy has a semi-automatic sniper, that is really cool. Usually they're bolt actions. And in case if you don't know, from what I've known and from what I've been told, bolt actions are better as snipers because I guess you could say the gas-operated piston of a semi-automatic firearm can sometimes lead to less accuracy at longer ranges. And so a bolt action is better for more reliable accuracy results. I'm not sure if that's true or not. That's what I've heard often. So, you know, don't quote me on that one. But still, it's interesting to see that this guy is using a semi-automatic rifle as a sniper. With that, we're now going to be moving out of this bit of footage from the Huilopol area and moving down towards Rykov, where we saw the Ukrainians pushing forward. And this is an incredibly long video, 15 minutes long, so we're going to have to condense it a little bit and skip through. So, without further ado, here's the video. This was also taken months ago, apparently in August, but the footage was just released recently.
Зеленку. Ой, ой, ой-ой-ой. Вот по нам прилетело.
You see the artillery landing in the distance, the Ukrainians watching on in awe, as their artillery wipes out the Russians in front of them.
Дальше летит. И дальше, смотри, 1 квадрат накрыли.
We're now going to skip forward a little bit. We see the Ukrainians advancing through the underbrush. Now see them quietly observing their surroundings and most likely coming up with a plan. Skipping forward a little bit more in the video, we now hear that they've gotten in a firefight with the Russians.
Нет, перед нами нет! Мы крайние! Пидоры там! Давай! Давай, погнали! Штурмуем пидоров! Парни, 30 метров, окопы пидоров с 2 сторон! Давай! Рыжий, давай!
We hear them continuing the firefight. A very difficult undertaking in underbrush like this. Stories from Vietnam, also, oh, sweet MG3 right there, like that. But stories from Vietnam recount that bush firefights, like for example in the jungles of Vietnam, were incredibly difficult as the foliage around them can deflect the bullets quite easily because sometimes it can be so dense. We hear the firefight continuing, the cameraman laying down fire of his own through the underbrush.
Давай!
We're now going to skip forward a little bit more. And we can see that they appeared to have made it to the Russian dugouts that they were assaulting earlier, and the Russians have either been taken out of this area or have retreated.
Не знаю, блядь, я их просто чищу. Подожди.
Now see them clearing out some of the dugouts that they find themselves around.
Жмур есть?
Так, еще раз, Мартин!
Да.
Now see them moving into what appears to be the center of the Russian camp, and also clearing more foxholes and dugouts.
А? Что ты говоришь?
Рация пидорская.
Охуенно. Два гранаты кинул. Есть что? Вижу окоп впереди, кидай гранату. Кройте, пацаны.
Аккуратно, все смотрят. Братан, как позывной?
Агрессор, граната! Граната! Есть в окоп прям.
Так, пацаны, правый, продвигаемся. Правый.
We see that they're continuing to clear the Russian camp, throwing grenades into some of the dugouts.
Стой, стой, давай зайдем посмотрим, может калахи есть. Фонарь есть?
Я пробую фонарь.
Сейчас.
Сорвай нахуй тут такая гадость.
Стой, 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 не ебашь, не ебашь, не ебашь. Нихуя нету.
Вот так, братан.
А? Не ебашь, не ебашь, не ебашь.
You know, Matthew, I was just thinking, you know what would be ideal in a situation like this, looking into a dugout?
What's that?
A flamethrower.
Ooh.
Not really.
Isn't that outlawed, though?
That is actually outlawed. But one thing I was thinking here, I was like, in World War I, they would have used a flamethrower here. And, of course, that's not legal anymore, and I'm not saying that they should, but that would really help out Ukrainian soldiers like this one in having to not get in a dangerous situation like going down in there, because what if there is a Russian down there and he immediately catches you in a bad situation? Of course, though, you know, it is what it is, but still an interesting thought. Also, Jason immediately said, oh yeah, you know, a war crime. Yeah, of course.
Вот кабачки. А, не пиздався. Быстрее, быстрее, это ихний. Брат, что ты?
Everyone's saying a grenade would also work. We have seen them use grenades.
Где?
Now
Не
see them moving around
ебашить!
the camp.
Не убивать! Никто тебя бить не будет, не бойся. Есть что-то? Нож, может? Ничего не. Гранат.
Вставай нахуй.
Стой, нет, стой. Стой.
Сука, сумки, все, доставай, открывай.
Возьми, белый. Снимай, брат.
Что, сука, охуели, сука? Нахуй мы сюда приехали воевать.
Я не воюю.
А что ты делаешь? Смотри, какие магазины.
One second, everyone. I'm going to pause this real quick, and I want to find out, are flamethrowers a war crime? I want to see by modern rules of war. Let's see here. Let's see. Is it a war crime to use a flamethrower? You can't use.
You can use them to fry your enemies.
You can't use them to fry enemies, according to Protocol 3 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. So, let's see. This clause prohibits the use of incendiary weapons on people, but you can use them on clear foliage. It seems like, we're not going to go into that territory. So apparently, it appears that you can't. I was wanting to make sure on that though, because I was thinking, like, I was like, in Vietnam they used them a little bit. I was like, surely it hasn't been that short of a time that's changed. Apparently, it has.
Бинт, что там?
Снимай курточку.
Не, бинт,
Раздевайся нахуй, быстро.
Снимай куртку.
Слушай,
куртку сними.
Раздевайся нахуй. Раздевайся, просто курточку снимай, идем.
Давай.
Снимай быстро, я считаю до 3.
Никто тебя ебашить не будет. Давай, брат.
And this man has turned, and of course y'all are gonna be like, how in the world do I know about this rapper? But I know about him because of jokes that were said about him. This man right here, this Russian prisoner, is now turned into Tekashi 6ix9ine, as he's now ratting out everyone in the area that's a Russian and where they are.
Все, смотри, граната сразу нахуй ебало стреляй, понял? Все, тогда
телефон твой?
Жить будешь, да? Давай, охуенная трубка, мне нравится. Все, поднимай его, Рамс.
Давай, вставай.
Рамс. Все, вставай, куртку забирай тоже, куртку забирай. Все, пошли, все. Едешь домой в Донецк, давай.
Донецк едем.
With that, we're going to end the video here because it is an incredibly long one, and I can't show the entirety of it as we still have news to cover, but you can see that in August, the Ukrainians met some pretty good success here in the south, and now, months later, we're finally getting a pretty good look at what a Ukrainian firefight looks like from their perspective. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the southern front, and while it is filled with a load of news and a lot of new movements by the Russians, it appears that nothing is amounting to any kind of meaningful change to the front lines. With that, we're now going to be moving down to the area of Kherson to cover our last 3 bits of news for the night before the speech from Zelenskyy. First off, with some Georgian volunteers checking out some brand new equipment.
Подарочек от расистов. Машаллах.
See them checking out what appears to be a man pad and also a mortar. No, actually, that looks like one of those automatic grenade launchers.
Вот это расисты, да, сбежали? Если не верите, можем вам даже показать. Ничего на украинском не написано. Вот. Российский, российский. Все российское. Вот, направление, все написано. Трофей российский. О, самый главный трофей вот стоит. Новый. Даже не успели расисты выстрелить. АГС-очка хорошая, новенькая. Ничего, на пользу пойдет нашей...
One of the few new things that the Russians have ever had on the front lines, a brand new AGS.
It was so new they couldn't even figure out how to use it, probably.
Yeah, they just ran away from it. Oh, new technology, run!
Все побросали. Прикинь, их страх какой был.
I'm not 100% clear on this. It's like they were very scared. I mean, they left behind just spare ammo cans all over the ground. They left behind everything.
Брат, скажешь пару слов?
Oh my god, Mandy, this guy pulled out your line. He said, brother, any few words to say. That's like you saying, and I'm sure the enforcer has something to say about this.
Yes.
The Frontline version of that same statement.
Иншаллах, добьем, иншаллах. Еще больше отобрем. Будем их хвалить этими оружиями.
This fellow reminds me of somebody. I can't remember who.
And who's that?
I don't know. I just can't remember.
Слава Грузии! Слава Грузии! Грузинский легион сила!
And with that, that's the end of the video, but a pretty interesting look at these Georgian volunteers that are helping out incredibly well in the southern front. Now moving on into the area of Snihurivka, we saw some more Russian forces getting obliterated. What was that, Matthew?
Oh, go ahead.
No, what were you laughing at there?
I just see everybody in the comments talking about the fellow sitting there on the automatic grenade launcher.
Oh, don't be mean to him, folks. But with that, we're going to let the video continue. See them driving by some destroyed Russian vehicles here. I like how they're driving through, Matthew, like it's some kind of wild country safari. Like, look, that must be a tire. This guy's like, look, that must be a grad. It looks like a grad. It's just driving by a burning grad.
Yes.
Вон, все сгорели. Раз, два.
Oh.
По нему проехал.
I didn't see it. Oh. Well, now I know why we didn't see it. Okay, well, we're gonna let the video continue.
Вон.
That might have been hyperbole.
Вон тоже труп лежит. О, бля, вон мужики, пиздец. Всех. Даже не ушли, что ли?
And with that, that's the end of the video, and pretty nice look at Russian convoy that was destroyed outside of Snihurivka, and of course showing that the Ukrainians are doing an incredibly good job. It looks like the entirety of the convoy from the lead vehicle to the rear guard were completely wiped out in a single go. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the area of Snihurivka and on to our last bit of news near Oleksandrivka, where you can see an Excalibur round hitting a Russian tank fairly dead on. So with that, here's the video, and I cannot play it because it has rap music, but when you see the Russians hopping down towards their tank, and artillery slams directly on top of it and then right beside it, taking out the crew and the tank with it. We now see the tank a burning wreck, and with that, that's the end of the video. And while we have some pretty good news coming out of the Kherson area, we haven't seen any major frontline changes here. It appears that the frontline is still stagnant. And so with that, we're now going to be moving up to Kyiv and covering the speech from President Zelenskyy here on day 259 of the war. And before this speech runs, I asked that if you are new to this channel and have not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe to this channel, as it helps you to keep apprised of the news and, of course, helps us to keep covering it as well. This stream runs every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays, and so I hope you become a member of this great channel and the Great Lee Spring Army and help us to continue to cover this news. And so, without further ado, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on day 259 of the war.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Триває важливий для нас підготовчий тиждень. Напередодні дипломатичних активностей другої половини листопада. Це вагомі саміти, двадцятка, АСЕАН, Парламентська асамблея НАТО і деякі інші. Позиція України має бути і буде почутою в усіх частинах світу. Також працюємо для продовження і розширення нашої експортної зернової ініціативи. Додамо ще постійний гуманітарний компонент зерновому експорту. Разом з передовими і найбільш сумлінними державами будемо збільшувати допомогу тим країнам і народам, які особливо потерпають від продовольчої кризи. І вже відбулись перші наради, маємо перші міжнародні домовленості. Фактично, разом з партнерами починаємо таку співпрацю, яка може стати основою для гарантування продовольчої безпеки на новому рівні. Давно говориться, що потрібна глобальна координація для порятунку найбільш бідних країн світу від голоду. І саме такий механізм координації наразі і опрацьовуємо. Сподіваюсь, вдасться його реалізувати. Зустрівся сьогодні з постійною представницею США при ООН Ліндою Томас Грінфілд, і значна частина наших переговорів була присвячена саме гуманітарним темам. Бо чим більше змістовною буде наша співпраця з партнерами для подолання різних гуманітарних проблем, тим менше міжнародних протиріч і криз будуть використані Росією для шантажу міжнародної спільноти. Окремо обговорили з пані Томас Грінфілд наші кроки в рамках Генеральної асамблеї ООН і проекти резолюції, які пропонуються Україною. Дуже важливо говорили про те, як все ж таки забезпечити доступ представників ООН і Червоного Хреста до українців і українок, які утримуються в російському полоні. Кожен день і кожну міжнародну можливість використовуємо для того, щоб наблизити звільнення усіх наших людей з полону. Пам'ятаємо про кожну, хто утримується окупантом. В інформаційному просторі поки певне зменшення кількості новин з фронту, повідомлень менше, ніж, наприклад, на початку осені. Але це не означає, що інтенсивність боїв стала меншою. Ситуація складна по всьому фронту, на окремих ділянках тривають, як і раніше, жорстокі позиційні бої, особливо важко, теж, як і раніше, на Донеччині. Активність окупантів там зберігається на надвисокому рівні, десятки атак щодобово. Вони несуть надзвичайно масштабні втрати, але наказ у них не змінився. Так само вийти на адмінмежу Донеччини. Не здаємо там жодного сантиметру нашої землі. Я дякую усім нашим героям, які тримають позиції на Донбасі. Херсонщина. Чітко розуміємо, що в планах у ворога, тож діємо відповідно, акуратно, продумано і в інтересах звільнення всієї нашої території. Укріплюємо наші позиції, ламаємо російську логістику, послідовно знищуємо потенціал окупантів, утримувати окупації південь нашої країни. Схід. Крок за кроком рухаємось до повернення українського прапору в усі наші міста і громади. Активно зміцнюємо і кордон. Одночасно з цим триває робота по відновленню нормального життя у звільнених районах. Тільки за минулу добу і тільки, наприклад, у 2 районах Харківщини повернули газ і електрику більш ніж 1000 домогосподарств. Продовжуються ремонтні роботи і на всіх тих об'єктах енергетики, які постраждали від нещодавніх російських ударів. Станом на цей вечір близько 4 мільйонів українців в 14 областях та місті Києві відключені від електропостачання, але більшість саме за стабілізаційними графіками, а не аварійно. Я дякую усім нашим енергетикам, комунальникам, обласним адміністраціям, місцевому самоврядуванню, усім, хто повертає нашим людям передбачуваність життя навіть у таких умовах. Сьогодні уряд України ухвалив важливе рішення, яке допомагає пройти зимовий період. Імпорт товарів, які необхідні під час опалювального сезону, буде звільнений від сплати ПДВ і ввізного мита. Це має спростити і здешевити постачання в Україну генераторів, акумуляторів, трансформаторів та іншої подібної техніки для енерго- і теплозабезпечення. Важливо і те, що накопичуються достатні обсяги газу і вугілля, щоб забезпечувати українців. Ми чітко розуміємо, перетворити зиму на зброю – це план держави-терориста проти нашої держави, як і проти усієї Європи. Але робимо все, щоб і цей російський план зазнав провалу, як різні попередні. І ще одне. На Алеї Сміливості в Києві ми відкрили табличку, що з'явилась там першою. Це табличка, присвячена Шону Пену. Він був в Україні 24 лютого і з того самого дня робить усе, щоб допомагати нам збирати міжнародну підтримку. Але сміливості – це не просто знак нашої вдячності лідерам політичним, громадським і культурним, які захищають свободу разом з українцями, але й нагадування усім майбутнім поколінням нашого народу, які різні люди, сили і галузі об'єдналися заради нашої перемоги. На Алеї Сміливості будуть представлені усі лідери, які підтримали Україну особисто, прибувши на нашу землю у вирішальний час повномасштабної війни. Коли такий лідер прибуває в Україні, зараз ми відкриваємо його іменну табличку. Загалом на Алеї Сміливості будуть представлені десятки імен. На сьогодні, окрім Шона Пена, вже відзначені президентка Єврокомісії Урсула фон дер Ляєн, президент Польщі Анджей Дуда, президент Латвії Егілс Леніц, прем'єр-міністр Великобританії Борис Джонсон, прем'єр-міністр Чехії Петер Фіала, прем'єр-міністр Словенії Янес Янша, прем'єр-міністр Польщі Матеуш Моравецький, віце-прем'єр-міністр Польщі Ярослав Качинський. Я дякую усім, хто допомагає Україні. Слава кожному і кожній, хто воює за нашу державу. Слава нашому міцному народу. Слава Україні.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Zelenskyy, rounding out the day 259 news. And in case of any of y'all were wondering what I was doing there near the end of the speech, I was trying to drag a picture of a statue of Ox the Blue Babe and also Paul Bunyan into frame because of that little blue bull over there that everyone was talking about. I found what it was. It was Ox the Blue Bull, but I couldn't get it to fit. It freaked out and it started throwing up all of my tabs. So then I just backed out of it. So let me see if I can find it again real quick. Let's see here. Here we go. There we go. It's the Blue Bull. So that's what all of y'all were wondering was happening on screen. I was trying to put that over there so that way I didn't have to make the reference after the speech, but I still had to. But with that, that is the end of the day 259 speech from President Zelenskyy, and I thank everyone who was here for the news for watching once again. If you did enjoy, please... Oh, it's Babe the Blue Ox, not Ox the Blue Bull. Anyway, sorry about that, everyone. Moving on from that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe as well. It helps out our channel a load if you subscribe, and of course, it helps YouTube to spread us to more people and let the Lee Spring Army continue to grow. I thank you all so much once again for watching the news segment, and we're about to be moving into the question segment, where we will then be seeing all of the questions and also all of our polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so first up, the first poll said, should butterfly mines be banned? It looks like 65% said yes, they are inhumane, 19% said maybe, but I don't know, and 16% said no, it's not uniquely vicious. Now, for me, I'd have to go with the majority, but Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to go with the majority as well. I don't believe that anti-personnel mines are inherently a war crime, but I do believe that smaller toe-popping mines, like a butterfly mine, are war crimes in their own right. They maim, they don't kill. I believe if you make a weapon, its intent should be to kill as quickly as possible. It should not be to maim. Because imagine how barbaric that is, that you get everything below your shin blown off, and you just live in pain for if you survive, and then afterwards you're just missing the lower half of your leg. I think that's a really messed up kind of weapon, that its intent isn't to kill, it's just to maim. So I would certainly say that it should be a war crime. It seems to be an inhumane premise. I also find mines that have been used before by the Soviets, of course in Vietnam they were called toe poppers. I found those to be quite inhumane as well, and I also find really any small toe popping anti-personnel mine to be inhumane in its own premise. The premise is not to kill, it's to maim, and I don't like the idea of just maiming. If you're going to make a weapon, it should have the intent of killing and ending someone's suffering, instead of just its entire purpose is to cause suffering. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, because this is kind of breaking news in some way, 6 hours ago, it looks like Zelenskyy said that he would set new conditions for genuine peace talks with Russia. And according to one of his officials, it looks like those 5 conditions are: number 1, restoring territorial integrity; number 2, respecting UN statute; number 3, paying off all damages caused by the war; 4, punishing each war criminal; and 5, guarantees that it won't happen again. So it looks like maybe the West has had a little bit of effect on his stance with Russia. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's a great thing to know that he is open to peace talks again. One thing I would have to say, however, is that in my opinion, knowing how the Russian standpoint is and has been, it sounds like those goals may be incredibly ambitious, at least for now, and the Russians wouldn't accept them still. But I still like the idea. I think all of those are very good premises to go into a peace agreement with, and if none of those can be reached, then there is no reason to end the war. It's just that one thing I will have to say, though, is that I hope no one expects anything to come out of these peace talks coming up, because the Russians most likely will still not accept those terms. But I still like them. Those are pretty good conditions. And so with that, I hope that addresses that statement, and also that is fairly breaking news. And so with that, we are on to the polls.
All right, and the second poll said, was the music Rammstein or Pac-Man? That poll ended out with 74% saying Rammstein and 26% saying Pac-Man. So I think it was obviously not Pac-Man, but it looks like some people were being sarcastic or genuinely thought it was Pac-Man. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, me personally, I think it's Pac-Man. I've never heard of Rammstein. I've heard of Ramstein Air Force Base, but I've never heard of Rammstein itself. So I would have to go with Pac-Man. And I know that's about to make the live chat blow up again. It's not Pac-Man, man, it's Rammstein. We are living in America. America is Fundraiser. And I know that song, but I don't know anything else from him. And so with that, we are on to the next one. I hope I addressed that one fairly well.
All right, and the final poll before we get to our questions said, do you agree that flamethrowers should remain outlawed? And of course, we know now that flamethrowers are only outlawed when you use them against humans. You can use them to clear your brush in your front yard if you want. 66% said yes, they are cruel and inhumane. 11% said I don't know, and 23% said no, flamethrowers are fair game. So I think they should remain outlawed against humans, because for one thing, that's very nasty. But you know, I really don't understand how they can sell them in gun stores. Like, not too far from where we live, they sell them in gun stores. So that's kind of interesting. But Enforcer, what say you?
So interestingly enough, Matthew, you wouldn't believe it, but flamethrowers don't qualify as weapons in the United States, and so a criminal can buy one.
Now, that is interesting.
Yeah, so if you can find yourself a M79 flamethrower, and let's see, M79 flamethrower. Wait a minute, that's a grenade launcher, sorry. Flamethrowers for sale. I forgot the... Oh my god, look at that. You can buy them on Amazon? What?
Now, that's a torch kit. That's not quite a flamethrower.
I was about to be like, what in the world? Because it looked kind of like a... it doesn't really look like one now.
I think it's called an X38 or something like that.
You can get them on eBay.
Interesting.
You can get this one. It's for $6.99 from Texas Fowlers. Okay, so it doesn't look like Amazon sells them, so that's that's good to know. But yeah, these things do not qualify as firearms. They just qualify as nothing, so you can just buy them from anywhere. You don't have to have any kind of background check for it or anything like that. And you can even buy the actual ones used in, I guess you could say, World War I, World War II, if you can find them. The World War I ones are incredibly expensive and highly rare, and also mostly don't work. But if you could use an actual weapon of war without any background checks or anything. So that's really interesting. I find it to be odd that that is the case in America. You would think that those things would be regulated, but they're not. But moving on from that, flamethrowers are quite inhumane. However, I can see one thing. Because Matthew, you remember the little talk that we had with someone, where they were like, it's 50 caliber guns are supposed to be used according to the U.S. Army as anti-material weapons. Supposed to be targeting enemy equipment, and so they would aim at the bulletproof vest on a guy and hit it, and then they were taking out equipment, and it just happened that someone got taken out. By
Yes, I remember that.
I feel that the flamethrower would most likely be used if it was used under a similar premise. Oh, we're clearing the foliage in this forest. Oops, we didn't see the trench. I feel like that would be the way it's used. Of course, that's a whole rabbit hole in its own. But anyways, moving on from that, I would have to say largely it is an inhumane premise. I don't know if any of y'all have seen All Quiet on the Western Front that just came out from Netflix. I haven't. I've only seen a small clip of it on YouTube. But if you wanted to see the true horror of flamethrowers, there's a small clip on YouTube of the tank battle that occurs in All Quiet on the Western Front. And you can get a pretty good idea of what flamethrowers were used like then. And it's not necessarily a great idea to think of being torched or having all of the oxygen sucked out of your dugout from the massive fire occurring in it and then dying from asphyxiation. Either one is a pretty bad way to go, and so I would say they're quite inhumane. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll. So, of course, we are moving into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have one from Walter A. Lakota Jr. once again, who this time puts in a $50 donation and says, fun fact, in Honolulu, Oahu,
Oahu, you mean?
Oh,
oh!
I knew I was mispronouncing it, but I had no idea how to go about it. So how is it again?
Oahu.
Honolulu, Oahu, at the end of Fort Street. At the end of Fort Street Mall is remains of a Russian fort cannon. The Iolani Palace had indoor plumbing and indoor gas lights before the White House, and the Falls of Clyde is the only 4-mast sailing ship left in the world.
Now, real quick, Matthew, can you tell me the name of this fort? Wait a minute, I have the thing over here. 1 second. Let's see here. So let me find it again. In Honolulu, Oahu, at the end of Fort Street Mall, it's the remains of a Russian fort cannon. Let me find that real quick. Let me see. So it's old Fort Street Mall in Honolulu. So let's go to Fort Street. So here's Fort Street. Here's the Aloha Tower. So the end of the street. So we're looking at for the end of the street. I have a feeling it's going to be this way, more towards the harbor. Let's see. Fort Street Mall Cannon. So let's see. So historichawaii.org appears to maybe have an article on this. We can also see the flag of Hawaii. A really interesting one. But moving on. Question, Matt. Let's see. Was the banks were on Fort Street? Let's see. Blocked off. The mall finally became a reality. Difficulty. Many of the retailers were cautious. Huh. Let's see. It looks like the fort was somewhere right around here. So let's see if we can find the cannon. I can't find the cannon. I'm looking for it. Wait a minute. No, that's not the cannon. Ackfield and Company Gate. Dang it, I don't think I'll be able to find it. Dagnabbit. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about that, Walter. I'm trying to find this cannon the best I can, but I can't find it. Can't find it anywhere on the street for a matter. Let's see, office pavilion. We're getting down towards what appears to be the highway. And I just can't find it. Dagnetted. I'm sorry about that, Walter. But I thank you so much once again for the support. And we will check on that other thing. The Falls of Clyde. We'll pull that up over here, actually. Falls of Clyde. Let's take a look at that. Falls of Clyde. Sailing ship. Oh, crap! Wait a minute. Let me take a look at that.
And Walter said it's at the gate you mentioned.
Oh, it's at the gate. One second. Let me go find the gate again. The gate. The Hackfield and Company gate. Let's find this gate. Let's take a look at the picture. So just got the Hackfield Company gates just in the middle of a park. Let's see here. We got a 360 view of this park. So let's take a look. Let's find the key emblem. Oh, there it is. It's right there.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I think
He's just sitting there kind of unassuming. It looks like it doesn't belong there, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, it's just like in the middle of the park. Like, it's just there, but still pretty cool. And I thank you for showing that to us. And now, let's move on to the Falls of Clyde. Let's see. It said, let me check this out. Last surviving iron-hulled, four-masted, full-rigged ship and the only remaining sail-driven oil tanker. Wow, that is cool. And also, it appears that it's falling into a little bit of disrepair, kind of like the SS America here on the East Coast. But that is really cool. It kind of reminds me of the SS Great Eastern. Well, no, more like the SS Great Britain, I believe. SS Great Britain, which I believe is now preserved in Bristol, if I'm correct. I misspelled Great Britain. And I am correct. The SS Great Britain is in Bristol. We almost went into that ship, but then we drove by it and decided to not. But still, really cool nonetheless. And I thank you so much for sharing those cool little facts with us, Walter. And also, it appears that you love Hawaii, because a lot of the facts you throw at us are Hawaiian, and they're really cool. I like them. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and sharing with us these really cool little locations here, like the Falls of Clyde. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support and also letting us take a look at these cool little deals. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $50 donation from Misk77, who says, super fun and informative channel, rabbit holes and all. Tonight's tech glitches have been hilarious, and both enforcers' selective hearing skills toward each other. Thanks for your hard work on the channel on top of your college schedules.
And thank you so much for the support, Misk77. And sometimes our selective hearing comes, and I'm just speaking on my end, Matthew may have a different story. Our selective hearing comes because we're so focused on one thing that when the other talks, it was completely in our periphery in terms of like what we're thinking of. So we're like, oh crap, wait a minute. It's like, what did he say? And he's like, you gotta say it again. You know, maybe maybe I was like, dang, that's a big explosion. And then Matthew doesn't say anything because he's probably busy with a live chat at that point. So that's the reason for our selective hearing. But I thank you so much once again. And also, I don't know what in the world happened to OBS tonight. I really don't, Matthew, because last time we ran it on Sunday, it was working fine. I set up, I turned on OBS tonight, haven't changed anything, and nothing works. That was the weirdest thing ever. And I'm glad that you found it funny, because I honestly find that to be abhorrent, because of course we try and make sure that this show is as well polished as possible, and so I find it just stupid that everything didn't work at the beginning. I'm very sorry about that to everyone who may have seen the glitch there, because I'm sure a lot of y'all have. But thank you so much once again for the support, Misk77, and also appreciating all of the work we put in on top of college. I actually missed one of my college classes today that I can't really miss, because my alarm, for some reason, is now not buzzing either. And so I had to go to a makeup class later on in the day, but I got to meet a whole bunch of cool people at college. I don't know if they're watching right now, but if they are, it was very nice to talk to y'all. It was very fun, and we had a pretty good time. That was like one of the few times recently that I've ever had the time to hang out with other people and just hang out. But it was really fun, and it was fun to hang out with them. So if they're on here, it was great. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Misk77. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you so much for the support in helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $28 super chat from Duncan VR, who comes in strong with the animal noises once again. He says, ba ba meow ba. Pootler was in the hot tub, ba ba. With 5 of his body doubles, ba meow woof. He got confused who he was. Matthew flew over in his Su-95. Yeehaw! Ba ba. He dropped a bomb on the tub. Oink ba and got them all oink.
Oh my lord, Mandy! Honestly, Mandy, I'm expecting one day that Duncan VR is going to put that song, you know, like the napalm song from Vietnam, if you know the one I'm talking about.
Yes.
I feel like one day he's going to put that in the middle of all those animal noises. But I thank you for the support, Duncan VR. And once again, Duncan VR is killing it with the animal noises and also killing Matthew with the torture of having to read them. But I thank you so much once again for the support of Duncan VR and also a pretty funny comment. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. So up next, we have a $22 super chat from BC Skyman, who left us a super sticker of that YouTube animal thing. I think holding up a thank you sign. I can't remember for certain. I forgot to write it down, if I'm totally honest. But BC, thank you very much for the support. If you're still here, I can't remember if you got off for the night already. But of course, sir, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support, BC Skyman. You didn't leave a comment, but you did leave support. And of course, you've been helping this channel to keep running ever since we almost started on day 4. And I thank you well, we started on day 1, but we really started to cover the news for most people on day 4. And so I thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman. You've helped out this channel massively, and I thank you so much for sending in a funny little super sticker and helping this channel to keep on running. Now, before we move on to the next one, and of course, thank you so much once again, BC Skyman, I saw Surprise-itus say someone liked the donuts you brought. And I did bring donuts today, and I'm wondering if you're one of the people from one of my classes. That would actually be pretty funny to find out. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, "This is for the Taco Tuesday Fund, and enjoy."
Hey, I thank you so much for the support, Santiago. And of course, it is Taco Tuesday. I haven't had tacos in a while, like beyond Taco Bell tacos, and that's Tex-Mex. That's not like a real taco. And, you know, and I think a lot of people have confusion that Taco Bell is trying to be authentic Mexican food.
Oh, no. Nobody's confused about that at all, I guarantee you.
Well, a lot of people try and put them in that criteria and say they're not Mexican food, and they're not. They are Tex-Mex fast food, which is kind of a very small subgenre of course, it's a Texan-Mexican blend, and it's still fast food, so you lose a little bit of the quality of Tex-Mex, but it's, you know, it's got some redeeming qualities to it, at least in the limited edition food runs, but their normal food, I'm not really a big fan of. And their limited edition food, it's just passable. Anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Santiago Flores, and I think if I had to get a taco, it would be a pulled pork or a brisket taco or a fish taco, which is Matthew's favorite form of taco. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. We will make sure to have some tacos eventually. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right,
and up next. Wait a minute, hang on, Matthew, real quick. I got to give a shout out to someone that I actually hung out with today, and I see them in the live chat. Micah is one of the people that I actually hung out with at college today and talked to. And I thank you so much for being on the stream this late. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes in. I thought that no one from college actually watched these streams. And I thank you so much for enjoying it because it was pretty fun. We had a fun time. So thank you so much once again for watching and also being here. That's just cool. Anyways, with that, we're now on to the next one.
And yeehaw! And moving on to our next one, we have a $20 super chat from Psyops, who is also now a moderator. Psyops says, "So as we know, let's see."
Oh man, I had to read it off. It's not political. It's just making a dumb, silly joke.
So as we know, our reptilian overlords are being elected tonight. Please remember to be respectful. And if you want to talk about politics, do it in the Discord and not in the live chat. Also, Texas stinks.
And thank you so much for the support, Psyops. And also, Psyops is now a moderator, so this is really, it's really interesting to have him as a moderator. And also, thank you to our little moderator team tonight for helping out with getting us some likes. And also, make sure to hit the like button if you are enjoying the stream. And moving on from that, and on into the super chat, Psyops is not making conspiracy. Psyops pulls people's chain, and so that's why we read it off, because the reptilian overlords.
Although there is one group that's commonly associated with the reptilian overlords, though.
Well, and honestly, I've heard it for everyone at this point. Kind of like how I've heard that I'm paid by George Soros to do this nightly, which doesn't make any sense, because if that was the case, then why do I thank people for sending in support to keep this channel running because it was paid by him? Why would I need it? You know, that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyways, moving on from that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. And also, I would have to agree with that. That was sent in very early. Right now, the midterm elections are going on. You know, and of course, while we don't talk about politics on this channel, that is a massive political event in the United States. We're not going to talk about American politics still, even during this segment. We don't ever talk about politics on this channel. And we were kind of had on Sunday, we got a story that had a little bit of a spin to it. We didn't know it at the time. We corrected it later on in stream. So, of course, we don't talk about politics on this channel. We don't pick sides. If you would like to talk about politics, I don't engage in it. Our moderators on the Discord don't engage in it. But you can talk with other viewers on our Discord server if you would like to talk about it with someone. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, Psyops. And I do agree, if you would like to talk politics for some reason, you can talk it over on the Discord. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so up next, another shout out to BC Skyman, who puts in another $20 donation without a comment. As also, it looks like David Prange also put in a 20 without a comment. But thank you very much to both of you for that support once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much once again, BC Skyman, for the support. Didn't leave a comment. I think he did leave in a super sticker on that one too, didn't he?
I think so. I think you have to.
And thank you so much once again. You don't have to. Remember, Matthew, remember the unnamed guy who just sent in $10 and he didn't even...
Oh, that was a Fed, though.
Yeah, that was true. That was the Fed.
They have special permissions.
Yeah, they just, you know, the FBI, $10, you know, just every once in a while.
Yes.
But thank you so much once again for the support, BC Scammy. He did throw in a comment again, but I thank you so much for once again helping out this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from DD Lachuga, who says, my question is, if Russia claims it to be illegal to annex Ukraine's land, then why can't Poland annex Kaliningrad and absorb it as part of Poland?
Great question, DD Lachuga. That's because diplomacy is one-sided. You see, when the Russians do something, they always make it to be justified. But if another country does the exact same thing they're doing, then it's unjustified, it's wrong, and it's criminal. And really, honestly, that's how the whole world works. That's how every country goes into diplomacy. Everything they do is good. Everything else, everyone else does, although it may be the same, is not good. It's not right. But that is a great point. Why doesn't Poland take back Kaliningrad? Why not turn it into Königsberg again? I mean, make Königsberg... Königsberg. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, DD Luchuga. I hope that does address that well. And also, real quick, let's see here. I'm going to scroll back because I saw someone say something. Surprise it sus said people went ape, and he's talking about on Sunday. And I would have to say this real quick to address that quickly. I didn't understand why people went ape, because while it did have a little bit of a spin on it, and then we went on later and I read one of the articles off stream while a video was running and saw that it did have a spin and corrected the story, I didn't understand why people went ape about that, because yeah, it was off. And every once in a while, it's actually not that uncommon for us to get a story a little bit wrong and then have a viewer say, hey, I think that may be wrong. Can you go back and look at it? And then we look at it and then we correct the story a little bit later on. It didn't make any sense to me at all that people went that insane over what happened. I think honestly, it was a little bit overkill. And to be quite honest with everyone, if those people wanted to leave and they found that to just be overboard, and, you know, even though we went back and still corrected it, maybe they shouldn't be watching the stream, you know, if they're that touchy, you know, because, you know, like it's fine if you say, hey man, I think that might have a political spin, you might want to go back and review that, because I'm not ever amiss to saying that something might be incorrect and changing it later on once someone tells me that it may be wrong. But one thing that I'm very well against is having people act like idiots over small things, and I've considered that a small thing, and I couldn't believe that people just went ape over it. It was pretty crazy. But with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have another $20 super chat from Chip Kerwan, who says, does Ukraine have paratroopers that jump out with parachutes? If not, why broad use of paratrooper term?
Great question, Chip. A lot of people these days use the airborne or the paratrooper term. It's very interesting to me. why they use it still, because paratroopers, even in America, like the 101st Airborne, along with the 82nd Airborne, they're called airborne. They originally were paratroopers, but they're, I mean, they're not even paratroopers anymore. Paratrooping is obsolete as a practice. We still do it a little bit. We always give people in airborne units in the United States a little bit of drop training, dropping them out of C-17s and similar aircraft, but it doesn't make any sense. It's not practical anymore in a modern war. These aircraft would most likely be shot out of the sky before they ever made it anywhere. And so I don't understand why we give paratrooper terms to units anymore, or why the Ukrainians do. I feel like it would be more so an apt description. Well, of course, in Ukraine's defense, these units that are called paratrooper units practically operate like light infantry. So, you know, in a way it still applies, but I feel like in the modern sense, U.S. airborne units like the 101st ought to be renamed from airborne units. I know that's going a little bit against tradition, but ought to be renamed from airborne units to something like helicopter assault units. Because that's practically what they become now, and that's the viable tactic to go with, instead of dropping them out of an airplane thousands of feet in the air, so that way they can be shot out of the sky. Although that's a war crime, that's most likely what would happen. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, at least in my opinion. I know that there's probably a decent amount of backlash against... Also, Brian Taylor, correct me, 82nd is a paratrooper division, sorry about that. But still, I don't understand why, because they do jump, yeah, but they only jump in training. Beyond that, they use helicopters for everything, so why not call them a helicopter assault unit or something similar? And so with that, we are on to the next one, but thank you so much once again for a great question, Chip, and I wonder why as well. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and just real quick, I did find an interesting piece of news from ABC News. 10 hours ago, they said the chairman of the Ukrainian parliament calls on the U.S. to provide CRAMs. Now, if y'all recall, this is something we've been saying for quite some time that would probably be useful, or at least I've been saying. I'm not sure if the enforcer agrees with me on that.
Watching.
So, yeah, that is quite interesting that they just mentioned that 10 hours ago. I think that's actually the first time they've actually requested that specific equipment. But I'll be interested to see if we actually provide it, because I think we should. But Enforcer, real quick, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that it's a pretty decent request, especially considering the situation with Russian missiles and also unguided rockets being used on the front line areas. I think that, if anything, these CRAMs could probably be used, if not to defend cities, to defend Ukrainian supply hubs and FOBs, because then, of course, they could even further solidify their supply lines and logistics and help the war to hopefully be ended even sooner because of that, due to the effectiveness of their infantry and their well-supplied states. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and that was some really good news, Matthew. Thank you for adding that in.
All right, so up next, we have a $20 super chat from Fernando Silva, who says, Russia hands captured British anti-tank missile to Iran in exchange for drones. The Kremlin gave to Iran over 120 million euros in cash, or pounds, in cash, along with the state-of-the-art weaponry seized from Ukrainian troops.
And thank you so much for the support, Fernando Silva. And I don't know if British anti-tank missiles have been captured. It seems like it would be quite rare and quite difficult for that to happen. But once again, I don't have any information on that to say whether it did or didn't. So I'll have to try and look into that a little bit more and see if that was the case. But if what you're telling us is true, then that does confirm that the Iranians did sell the Shaheds to Russia, although that has already been obvious. I don't even know, really, to be honest with you, Fernando, why we're all having to sit around and pretend like the Iranians did not give the Russians these Shaheds. It's clearly obvious. You know, it's obvious to both you, as me, and everybody, and I don't know why we're pretending like it's not. We saw the Shaheds in Iran before they were sent to Russia, and now for some reason, we're all trying to, like, well, at least everyone in the Western world, in the governments, I guess you could say in the Western spheres of governments, are all trying to pretend now like that isn't the case and there's no proof for it, and people like you and me are having to go and try and prove the obvious. But thank you once again for the support, and I would have to say that it is true. In the end, they did get the Shaheds from the Iranians. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support. And also, Matthew, a lot of people are bringing up better names than I guess you could say the airborne assault brigades that I was coming up with. Some people have been saying air assault. Some other people are saying air cavalry. All of those terms work, but I think that paratrooper is the one that works the least, because in actual doctrinal practice, that is the one thing they do not do is paratroop anymore. They entirely work off of helicopters. And so it should start moving towards that direction in terms of terminology, air assault, or something similar. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have about 30 super chats left, by the way, just as a heads up. It looks like the next one we have is from Terrace McGitz, who puts in a $20 donation and says, how do you guys think winter will influence the second and third defense line of Yuzhin?
The Russian. I think that was a typo. You put in an E instead of an R, but they're right beside each other on the keyboard. But thank you once again for the support, Terrace McGitz, and I think that the winter will affect the Russians heavily. They have not given their soldiers heavy winter gear. They will most likely start freezing, and also their supply lines will completely fall apart, most likely. And so, by those regards, it will heavily affect them. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Terrace McGitz. I hope that does address the question well, and I hope that everyone understands why I'm starting to speed up the answers here a little bit, because we have 30 to go. We still have live chats we want to answer as well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $15 super chat from Julie Noor, who says, Norway did it. Russia claims that Russian fishing boats dragged the communication cables in the sea from Svalbard to Norway twice by accident. Norway have the expertise to blow up the Nord Stream.
And I thank you for the support. And I like how the Norwegians are... Oh man, I like how everyone's like, yeah, Norway did it. You know, like a fishing trawler's just out there and just dragging communication lines across the bottom of the sea, ripping them apart. Honestly, it's not that out of the question. It could have happened. And also, the Norwegians, really all Western navies, regardless of their size, they have the ability to destroy the Nord Stream. So it could have been any one of them. It could have been the British with the Royal Navy. It could have been the United States. It could have been Germany even, or Poland. But we're not entirely sure who it was still, but I would still largely throw the accountability for that one on the West, as it would make the most sense for them to destroy the pipeline. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Oats Air, who says, take a question from the chat, and Slava LSA and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much once again, Oats Air. Also, Matthew, I love how in the pad it says Oats Air, like oats, you know. Like,
yes, I have to do that, or otherwise I'll butcher it.
And thank you so much once again for the support.
He's putting out my secrets on air too.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I was like, oh, that's funny. I thought it was like an autocorrect thing. But of course, thank you so much once again for the support. And we will get a live chat question in your honor. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we have a commonly requested question, and Susan Lowell put it in, who said, Enforcer discuss friendly fire among Russian forces.
Friendly fire is a pretty big issue amongst Russian forces from what we've seen. We've seen it multiple times on film alone, and usually it comes from poor training and also lack of clear identifying markers. That happened a lot more at the beginning of the war because the Russians had not overdone the identifying markers, mostly because they wanted to look professional. But now in the later ends of the war, it appears that fratricide has largely disappeared because Russian forces identify themselves so well. You cannot find a single part of a Russian vehicle that does not have a massive Z or a whole bunch of smaller Zs on it, or Russian soldiers that do not have red or white armbands on their legs, their arms, their head, and their chest. So it usually happened a lot more at the beginning of the war, but now that the Russians identify themselves to the point of buffoonery, it happens a lot less. But with that, I hope that does address the fratricide of the Russians fairly well, and thank you so much once again, Oitzer, for sponsoring that live chat, and of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Junebug72, who says, hi, I can't day, but I think she meant to say, I can't stay, but we'll watch your replay later. Have a fun stream and good evening.
And thank you so much for the support, Junebug72. And I can't day either, I only night. But thank you so much once again for the support, and I thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. You have been around for an incredibly long time, Junebug72, and I thank you so much for supporting this channel, being an incredibly nice person, and of course, always watching these streams. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, big shout out to Rad Doctor for putting in a $10 donation, but without a comment. Rad Doctor, thank you very much for the support, and we do appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Dallas Boracua21C, who says, "My friend is a Maytag repairman. Is he under any obligations to service Ukrainian stolen washers in Russia?"
The Maytag washing machine can wash 500 loads in the time it would take a normal one to wash 10. You know, I like those ads. For some reason, they're goofy. You know, where the two guys are sitting there and they're like spinning the clothes in thin air. Like,
yeah, do they actually wear that whole uniform like in real life, or is that just for the commercial?
let's see. Maytag repairman. If they do, I'd be blown away. So apparently they got a mascot guy. This looks like these pictures were taken a long while ago. Still, it would be kind of funny. It would be kind of cool if they did still wear. It looks like there's a Maytag repair woman here. This picture looks to be taken recently. They still wear the hat. That's cool, actually. That's really cool. A real Maytag repairman. It's nuts. I didn't even. I thought that was just a. I thought that was just a thing. I didn't know that they actually still did that. Anyways, moving on from that. That is incredibly crazy to see. And also, I don't think he would be obligated to do that because I believe they would be out of warranty at that point. But still, you might want to call him up and ask him about that because I think a Maytag repairman is obligated to go anywhere there's a Maytag washing machine. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again, Dallas, for a pretty good question and also bringing up Maytag because that's a pretty funny company. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, a big shout out to Jose Ruano for putting in a $10 donation as well. Excuse me, my nose is really acting up. I've got allergies or something going on. Jose puts in that $10 donation, but he doesn't leave a comment. But Jose, I think you've already gotten off for the night. But thank you very much for the support. And also, up next, we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, "I feel like this war is like September in 1939, but the difference is the West is supporting stopping the Russians here. If not, Putin would have to go onto the Baltic states. Cheers."
And thank you so much for the support once again, Santiago. And I would have to agree, it does feel similar to 1939 with the invasion of Poland, but there is a big difference, and that is that while Poland was largely left alone due to its geographic isolation in Eastern Europe, and it was impossible for anyone to help them out like the British or the French, it still seems like that in a way, but of course the major difference is that we're able to support Ukraine, and that's changed the entire course of the war here forward. And so with that, I thank you so much once again, and that is true. Because of the successes in Ukraine, Russia will not extend outwards elsewhere, and I think that's an incredibly good thing. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Santiago. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And real quick, I wanted to say this real quick because I saw a comment in the live chat, and I'll make this very quick. Someone said, I got tired of being told to vote, and and then he moved on to a joke pretty much. But one thing I gotta say, and this is just my opinion, you can agree with me or disagree with me. This isn't really picking anything political, saying one side or the other. But I am sick and tired of seeing that everywhere you go, nonstop, even when it isn't even election season, people are ramping up others to go vote. I think that's I've got to be honest with y'all, I think that's a bad idea. Because the people they're usually ramping up to vote, regardless of who they're voting for, have no idea why they're voting. They don't. And you're just trying to ramp it up to have a number mill going, and I don't like that. I think, honestly, voting should not be encouraged at all, and it should be something that's viewed as a civic duty by people who actually understand the policies of the people they're voting for, instead of just telling people, go vote for that guy because he cares for you. But why? Like, no one ever explains that for anyone. But anyways, that's just my opinion. I saw that, and I was like, and people have been asking us, can you encourage people to vote on stream? I don't want to. I don't feel like if you have no mental inclination to go vote, why should I try and make you go vote? Because you really, especially at this point, just one day before the midterm, you have no idea what you're voting for. You're just going to vote because someone told you to, and you have no idea. So with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. I know some people are saying voting is a civic duty. I think it's only a civic duty if you know what you're voting for. Like, you ought to know the policies of everyone involved, the pluses and minuses, how that'll affect you, and then go vote. And I feel like people ought to not, because you can vote for coroners and all that kind of stuff. Why? Like, what does it mean? Anyways, we're gonna move on. That's just what I'm saying. Just if you don't know what you're voting, if you know that the people you're telling to go vote don't know what they're voting for, don't tell them to go vote. Just tell them to stay at home or something. Anyways, we're on to the next one.
Up next, we have a $10 super chat from Carson Larimore, who says, Slavo Ukraine from Rockport, Texas. Pick a question from the chat, please.
And also, thank you so much once again, Carson, for the support. And also, Rockport, Texas. We finally got a location. And so, let's see here. Rockport, Texas. Let's take a look. I guess this port dealt with rocks. It's literally a port, so it must have dealt with rocks at a point. That's a pretty good assumption to make. So let's drop down here. Let's see what Rockport looks like. It honestly kind of looks like a normal American town. I say that like it's shocking. It's American. So, anyways, I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for letting us take a look at your hometown of Rockport, Texas. And with that in mind, let's get a live chat sponsored by none other than Carson Larimore.
All right, and the live chat goes to WNNR 1957, who says, I saw on YouTube today that the Russian military is suffering from an epidemic. Have you heard about that?
I have not heard of the Russian military suffering from an epidemic, although disease is usually rife within the military. That's usually a historical constant. It changed, however, around, I guess you could say, the mid to late 1800s, usually with, I believe it's quinine, which was used to stop, I guess you could say, malaria outbreaks fairly well, although it wasn't always effective. But that has usually been a historical constant, although not recently. But I have not heard of that, and I will try and look at some information to see if that is the case. But once again, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Badger Resistance, who says, Ben Hodges, the retired U.S. Army officer who served as commanding general, U.S. Army in Europe, is predicting Ukraine will have all territory returned pre-2014 by summer of 2023. What say you?
And I thank you so much for the support, Badger Resistance, and I would have to entirely agree with that assessment. That is what we've been estimating to be the end date of this war as well. We assume that it will be summer of 2023. And so in that regard, it sounds like Ben Hodges, based off of what we're saying, and of course he's a general, it sounds a lot like he's concurring with our statement and we're concurring with his, because it seems to be the logical end of this war. It can only go on so much longer, probably about 6 to 7 more months, and then it'll be over. The Russians just couldn't go on beyond that point. And I'm sure that he has a decent amount of knowledge working off of that, considering that he was the commander of the U.S. Army in Europe, and so it was probably his responsibility and probably part of his position to understand what a conventional land war would look like with the Russians, or a conventional land war with, say, smaller countries like Ukraine versus Russia. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. It would actually be pretty interesting to have a general like Ben Hodges on stream. Maybe he could share with us a lot of detailed information, of course not classified, that we don't know about. That would actually be pretty interesting to hear. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Badger Resistance, and I would have to entirely agree with that statement. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Enforcer, real quick, do you see the next 2 super chats in the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Do you want me to read those off?
Let's see. I'm looking at them. I don't, due to the shorthand they're in, I don't know if I actually understand them. Like, like understand the shorthand to know what the statement is. So you could read them off. Because it looks like it's mostly about the military industrial complex here in America. It isn't really a hidden fact. But so let's hear them.
All right. So the first one is a $10 donation from Chip Kerr1, who says, media, Ike's military industrial complex supports your decontextualized argument that something control change in material equals DoD contractors, something contribs. I think he means contributions, and lobby power assure high something of funding of Biden's efforts.
Well, moving on from that, I think what he's now that I heard it read aloud, I think I understand what it means. what he's saying, I believe, is that DoD contractors lobby to ensure that there's a high congregation of funding for the president's efforts. And in that regard, I could agree with that. However, I feel like that would be a constant regardless. On top of that, one thing that's important to remember is that the defense industry isn't this, it's been made to be this all-powerful automaton in the United States that kind of guides the government, but that's not always the case. And on top of that, politicians have and let me explain this way. This may be a way that no one's ever heard this before, and this is what I think. So just hear me out on this one and see if this sounds reasonable to y'all. Politicians have a responsibility to make sure that U.S. military equipment is sent everywhere and tested by someone else to see if it actually works. Because if you put a load of money into the defense industry, for example, on a project like the F-35, the F-22, or the Abrams, for example, in the 80s, and you pump out high-quality equipment for contract soldiers to use, like the United States uses, in a foreign war, and you go into a war and you steamroll someone because of that high-tech equipment and all of the testing that was done overseas by other people that weren't even associated with the United States because you gave it to them, then politicians can't get a lot of backlash. Because imagine if the U.S. had entered a war like Russia has, and we got floored. We just lost 80,000 people nearly in the course of 8 months. Think about 10,000 soldiers a month because of poor quality equipment. These politicians' heads would be rolling. And so these politicians have a responsibility, in a way, to make sure that this equipment is top-notch and to make sure that the defense industry, at least domestically, is top-notch. So that way, if the United States ever gets involved in a war, you can't lose because the equipment is just so good, just so high-end. So I don't really think it's entirely the defense industry always keeping things rolling. I think it's also the fear of losing a war or taking on high casualties, because that is not good at all for anyone that wants to be reelected, in a way, just talking about that in those terms. So I hope that addresses that fairly well, because I think that also may be one of the larger, well, maybe even larger than the lobbying side of things, that keeps the defense industry so well funded, I guess you could say, here in the United States. And so with that, we are on to the next one. I hope that addressed that fairly well.
And Enforcer, could I have you read the next one?
Let's see. Yes, I had to read it real quick, quietly. Chip Kerwan sent in another $10 super chat, saying, F. Silva's explanation, Iran-RU war crime barter, suggests best case news scenario with Netanyahu will not free up more Israeli high-tech weapons, fearing unintended disclosures in the hot phase fog of war. That might be... I don't think that would necessarily be true, because if F. Silva is correct, and there was some kind of backhand deal in between the Russians and the Iranians to provide the Shaheds, I would actually say that that would encourage Israel to support Ukraine more, considering that would practically become a proxy war in between Iran and Israel, with their vessel for the proxy war being the Ukraine-Russian war. I think they would actually start to send over the supplies at that point to try and counter, I guess you could say, Iran's deal with Russia. That's how I'm viewing it, but I could be wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. But I thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Navy Chino, or Sino. I'm not really sure. I think it might have been an autocorrect mistake. But anyways, they say, Enforcer, hi from, or how do you say that?
Arcachon or Arsachon? I'm sorry, I don't think we'll ever be able to pronounce that correctly, but try and butcher it the best you can, Matthew.
Arcachon, France. How long do you think that the Russian people will accept such a daily death rate amongst its soldiers?
Considering how pro-war the Russian public seems to be right now, I think they'll accept the war until the very end, until the crushing Russian economic defeat that will most likely come in the future. So, sadly, I hate to say it, Navy Chino, if that's how the name is pronounced, I think they'll keep on accepting, because I haven't honestly seen any major mindset change in the Russian public yet, which is really bizarre. But moving on from that, let's check out this little town that's right outside of Bordeaux. Oh, this is cool. Now, this is a nice town. Kind of reminds me of, like, 38. Isn't this cool?
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like this place. You live in a nice town. I gotta say, this is one of the best ones we've seen. And so, wait a minute, we got the fanny pack gang back here. They're robbing the car. They're robbing the car. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support. I hope you enjoyed us looking at your hometown that I cannot pronounce, but it does look incredibly nice. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $9 super chat from Sergey, who says, "Thank you for your work, guys."
And thank you so much for the support, Sergey, and thank you so much for supporting us, so that way we can continue on our work. Of course, without viewers like you helping this channel to keep on running, it's not possible for us to do this, and so thank you so much for enjoying the work that you are helping us to keep on doing. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and next up, we have a $7 super chat from Mike D, who says, "Can the U.S. president make executive actions to help Ukraine financially or with equipment if the House and Senate were to show resistance in the future?"
I don't believe that he could, because I believe that's something that has to be approved by Congress because it is an appropriations and funding issue. But I'm actually going to hand that over to Matthew real quick, because this is actually what he's majoring in college, so I think he might be able to answer that one a little bit better than me.
And I believe you are correct, Enforcer. However, that would not stop a president from trying, but it would be probably struck down by the court.
Probably so. Okay, so that's good to know. It's good to know I wasn't that off base with that answer. And so with that, thank you for adding that back up, Matthew. And I hope that answers your question fairly well, Mike D. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Brad C, who says, "Do you think Herzon is a trap?" in Admiral Akbar voice.
It's a trap! I don't think it's a trap. I think the Russians are truly beat in this area, much like they conducted a sign of goodwill on Snake Island. I think they're doing the same thing in Kherson. They're not going down the massive rabbit hole, but they cannot hold their positions on the northern banks for any longer. They have to start withdrawing. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And thank you so much for the support, Brad C. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from LP, who says, "Wanted to write both of you men in on our ballot today, but didn't have your last name. Appreciate you guys." And also, LP, are you in Alabama?
And thank you for the support, LP. And while I would love to give my last name, sadly, I'm not old enough. And I'm probably not in your home state, you know, but if you are in Alabama, I am. But I'm not old enough, sadly. I would give.
You're not old enough to give your last name?
Well, I would give my last. I would give my last name, but I'm scared that could lead to some massive doxing issues because our last name is somewhat rare. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. I hate that I can't give you my last name. I would, but I think that we might get doxed at that point. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Fife, who says Europe needs to separate from American influence.
Whoa,
and that is impossible, by the way.
And that is a bad idea. That's a
very bad idea.
I thank you for the support, but that's not a great idea. If Europe separated from the United States, the Western sphere has been split in two. You have one economic sphere of equal value, and then one in the other continent. That would not be good. And on top of that, the European sphere, and the European and the American sphere coexist, although the United States takes the superior role whenever decisions have to be made. I guess you could say the 51% partner in this arrangement. The Europeans still rely heavily on American muscle and support. And without it, they would be in a much more difficult situation. So I would not agree with that at all. I also like the position of friendship that the United States has with Europe and Europe has with the United States, because it allows for a lot of economic activity that wouldn't happen otherwise, and therefore everyone prospers. And I think that's a good thing. So with that, I hope that does address that comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. So let's see here. Up next, we have a $5 super chat from the Badger Revolution. Let's see, Badger Revolution. So that's a different viewer than Badger Resistance. So we have a whole Badger-like army coming together here. Badger Revolution says, "How much will the lend-lease of North Korea and Iran help Russia?"
Not at all. The Iranians have only helped with drones. The North Koreans are probably going to help with maybe a bullet and a little ball of lint, and I think that'll be it. So with that, I hope that does address the question very well. Kind of in a joke, a little bit of a hyperbole, but it's not going to help them much. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Badger Revolution, and welcome to the Badger family. Vitaly just threw in a whole bunch of badgers in the live chat, which is pretty funny. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Madison Music Teacher, who says, Enforcer, if Ukraine pushes Russia out of their country, how would Putin save face and keep power?
He would probably try and save face and keep power at that point by making the war a ceasefire. He would call a ceasefire, but it wouldn't end officially. It would be an indefinite, non-ending, everlasting war, kind of like there is in between North and South Korea. They never signed a peace agreement in between each other. And so they're still at war officially. Also, Japan and Japan and Russia are still officially at war because they never signed a peace agreement in between them either. So I think that's most likely the direction it'll go. It'll most likely be to save face. And that's the way I see it going. That's how you probably stay in power. But take it with a grain of salt because there's a million ways that you could probably try and do that. That would also work. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And also, Book Bandit, yes, somewhat rare is our last name. So it is somewhat rare. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for your support.
And I had just written him back and said it took me 3 times to get it. I literally read it the first time. I was like, I don't understand it. Then he sent it the second time. I was like, and I was like, oh, he means like somewhat rare. It's like a dad joke. 2 seconds. But anyways, pretty good one. But up next, we have a $5 super chat from Craig Platel, who says, it's not a chrome paint job. It's bare aluminum. It saved weight and aerodynamic drag. And also Craig, I was just saying chrome just to say it, but you're right. And also I saw the chat going wild about that earlier. So yeah, good point.
And also, I thank you so much for that correction. Because it is aluminum. I don't know. Matthew said chrome, and my brain went into chrome, but but World War II is kind of known for aluminum, like coming around into being and actually being used heavily. So I'm sorry about that, Craig. Thank you for the correction, though, because that is a pretty good one to have. It's a little bit of a mistruth to say it's chrome. Like, honestly, man, I was thinking about that. Why in the hell would we think that they would paint a plane in chrome for fun? You know, like I was thinking about that. I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Was like the same color?
Yeah, kind of. Also, this one, no, that's not aluminum overcast. I have been in the aluminum overcast, which is it's a B-17G. I don't think I'll be able to find it here, but it does take some trips. I think that this is the aluminum overcast. I've been in that exact B-17 before, and it's pretty cool. It's also incredibly cramped compared to what you would think. But with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and thank you so much once again, Craig Patel, for the support, and also helping us to address that little bit of a mistruth. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says Ukrainian trenches have more amenities than provincial Russian villages. Installing solar in front of a hurricane tomorrow. Wish me luck, Slava, Florida.
What in the world?
Wait a minute, is there a hurricane coming toward Florida again?
Philip, are you nuts? Don't be installing solar panels in the middle of a hurricane. You're gonna die. But thank you for the support, Philip. At least you helped this channel keep running before you die, and thank you for your sacrifice. But I do have to agree.
I don't think the sun's going to be out during the hurricane either.
Yeah, I don't think it will. That's one of I got to be honest with y'all. That's one of my big problems with solar is that it can't meet the needs of the grid. The grid's got to meet the output of the panels, and that's something that'll pose an issue later on. And and that could be a whole video. But it's an interesting topic nonetheless. Still, neat way to produce energy. Also, I wish you the best of luck. Hope you don't get killed. But anyways. To address that, yes, Ukrainian trenches do have more amenities than provincial Russian villages. Definitely. I mean, like, Russian villages don't even have a water source, yet Ukrainian trenches have showers. Like, that really tells you how big the gap is in between Ukrainians and Russians, even on the front lines and what they believe is good amenities or not. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Philip Fixes, and stay safe out there. Don't get yourself hurt. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have another $5 super chat from Craig Platel, who says, flamethrowers are not illegal to use against troops. Go read CCW 3rd Protocol, also Chapter 6 of the US DoD Manual for the Law of War.
And thank you for the support, Craig Patel. And sadly, I cannot read that on stream due to time constraints. But considering that you have been correct on everything you've ever corrected us on before, which has been actually a decent amount, not gonna lie, I will take your word on this one, and I'll say it's probably not a war crime. However, I have not seen anyone using them recently. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have another super chat.
Oh, bless you.
Excuse me. We have another one from Craig Platel, who puts in another $5 donation and says, it is not against the law of war to use 50 cal against troops. Again, go to USDOD manual to see.
And thank you so much once again for the support, Craig Patel. And I have to say this, Matthew and me actually knew someone, a commander who served at a FOB in Afghanistan, and he actually believed that was the case. So maybe it's not true, but I mean, like, hell, this guy ended up being a pretty high rank in terms of
no snitching, unfortunately.
Yeah,
no
snitching. We're not going to say his name. He ended up being a pretty high rank before he retired in the U.S. Army, and I would have to say that if he believed it, that's what made me believe it, because he was pretty been determined on saying that was the truth. But with that, I thank you once again for the correction, Craig, and I'll make sure to try and check that out and read up on it after stream. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, a big shout out to Steve Turn for putting in a $4 donation, as well as Pubbin for putting in a 3, and Dumper Bob for putting in a 2. Thank you very much to all three of you for that support, and we do appreciate it as like usual. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze again.
Matty, you sound like a certain former politician who also used to breathe a lot through the nose, because I'm hearing this all the time. I'm hearing that every time, like, you do anything with your nose. It's all like, dang, man, I'm like, he's breathing in over there.
Yes, excuse me. I'm really having some struggle over here. But anyways, up next, we have a $4 chat from Neoclassic YouTube, who says, hello, everyone. Just entrees to say hello. Greetings from Chatkovec in Croatia.
And let's check that out real quick. And so here we go. It's a small little place, but it's got a nice castle in the middle of it. Let's check it out. Oh wow, that's a real nice one. Wow. That is really cool. So let's take a look at the town itself now. Of course, I'm always a big fan of monasteries, churches, castles. And this is a pretty cool town. It's got, I don't know, I mean, because a lot of time has passed since this era, but for some reason, it gives an Austro-Hungarian feel. I don't know why. It just feels like that. But it's super cool. Also, look at the nice little sitting place they have in the square. Also, Matthew, it sounds like your nose is taking a one-way trip.
Yes.
And so with that, we are on to the next thing. Thank you so much once again for the support, Neoclassic YouTube. And thank you so much for allowing us to take a look at your hometown in the middle of Croatia. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Joseph M. Seco, who says, Tatara! My MOS was 0351 flamethrowers. Since the Geneva Convention rocket launchers, you answered this before, but I hope that answers your question mark. No. Where are the smalls? Shoulder-fired multi-purpose.
And thank you so much for the support, Joseph M. Sicko. I believe, remember, Matthew, it's not Sicko, it's Sicko. But thank you so much once again for support. It's been a long time since you've thrown any support, but I thank you so much once again for helping out this channel. And also, I thank you for correcting that, because it appears that you were one of those guys who operated the Flash, which was I believe it's the Flash if I'm correct, the Flash incendiary. Let me make sure I'm correct. Yeah, it's this thing. Okay, cool. I had to make sure I was, hopefully I'm correct. I might still be wrong on that. But this thing is pretty cool because it fires if I'm correct, an incendiary round. It's neat. Also, it appears that it was used in the war in Afghanistan by the U.S. So, yes, fairly recently these things have been used. So I thank you for correcting that, and it appears that it is the case. This thing can be used. And And also, I don't know where the smalls are. I was been wondering where they've been the whole war too, because they're a very common weapon. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, a big shout out to Dubsy Dabster for putting in a $2 donation, but without a comment. Dubsy, thank you very much for your continued support, and thank you for being a viewer as well. And for our final super chat of the night, we have that $2 donation from our Japanese viewer, ETA Karina, and maybe that's an accurate translation, hopefully, who says, I often listen to it during my lunch break. Do you think aid will change depending on the outcome of election in U.S.?
And also, thank you so much for the support. And also, that was really cool to see you write up a super chat in your home language, Japanese, which is just so cool. Like, that was the neatest thing ever. It really blew me away to see it. I was like, wow, that is so freaking cool. Really, honestly, although it would be a lot of extra work for Matthew, it would be really cool to see people write super chats in German and French. But I'm not encouraging that, though, because that would make Matthew's job incredibly difficult, and it's already difficult enough. But real quick, he is from Tokyo. Tokyo is a fairly new town, Matthew. I don't know if you know, but Tokyo was founded in the 1600s.
Really?
Yeah, so it's incredibly new, you know, compared to older cities like London, Paris, Rome, Beijing. I guess you could say even in Japan, like Kobe and Osaka, it is incredibly new. And even compared to Seoul, it's an incredibly new town. But let's take a look at it. And I'm calling this a town. It's one of the largest metropolises in the world. So let's take a look. Oh, Japan. It's a neat place. Really cool. Has a really unique...
And also, unfortunately, we're running really low on time, too.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry. But I gotta take a look at Japan. I mean, like, it's neat. And Japan's incredibly clean. Everyone who goes there always says it's incredibly clean. Y'all have such a neat culture, from what I've heard. Very interesting work ethics and all of that sort of stuff. And it's just a cool place. And I thank you so much for the support, and also being a Lee Spring Army member all the way from Japan. And of course, thank you so much once again for the support. And to address your comment, I don't think U.S. Aid will change depending on the election. One party right now seems to be in opposition, but it's only a feint. If they ever took charge of, say, the Senate or the House of Representatives, or both at the same time, the support would continue. It would just appear to waver for a second, and then it would continue as if nothing ever happened. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support, and also once again being from Japan. Really cool. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have one more super chat, this time from Joseph M. Seco one more time, who says, no, that's not it. It's a small, shoulder-fired, multi-purpose assault weapon. Please, can you look it up? I don't know why we're not sending them all we have.
And thank you once again for the support. Sorry about that. I got that wrong. You were actually talking about the small, and I addressed the small, and then the M202 thing, totally different. So sorry about that. I'll go back and correct that, Mr. Sicko. Cool name, by the way. Anyways, moving on from that. So interesting. I didn't actually know that this thing was incendiary. High explosive operations in Afghanistan and Iraq saw a thermobaric rocket added. That is really cool and kind of crazy in a way. And I thank you so much for sending in support again. And for that reason, that may be why we're not sending them. Maybe we don't want the public to get a bad idea, you know, because many people believe that incendiary weapons like flamethrowers are no longer used anymore, and that may be why we're not sending them. But still, an interesting question at that. And thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And we are running overtime heavily right now. So now that we've gotten done with the super chats, we're going to answer 5 live chats, and then we're going to round out tonight's stream. And so with that, which one is our first one, Matthew?
All right, so up first are 5 decoders on the stream tonight. C. Faye, WF2U, Mark Hodges, and B. And that's actually 4, by the way. They said the Morse code says the Russians are advancing 3 centimeters a day, says the Russians.
Ding, 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 ding. Y'all did get correct, and they are only advancing 3 centimeters a day as per the Morse code message and the Russian man on TV. He told me so, and it must be true. And so with that, thank you so much once again to all 4 of our Morse code deciphers for getting that message correct for the 259th day in a row. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Mr. Clamptastic, who says, question for tonight, are we going to see a collapse of the Russian lines in the next 2 weeks?
if we did, it wouldn't be an entire Russian front line collapse from north to south. It would most likely just be in the Kherson area, because that's the only place I could really see it happening. But even at that, it's a little bit of a stretch. 2 weeks, I would say more so a month or a little bit longer. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Richie MC, who says, when do you think Ukrainians will be able to vote again and no longer...
For some reason, Matthew, your mic is starting to cut out.
Can you hear me?
I can.
So Richie MC said, when do you think Ukrainians will be able to vote again and longer under martial law?
Great question. I don't know. It might be after the end of the war, because usually during wars, martial law is declared, especially when you're a defending force. That also applied in the United States as well in the Civil War, although the United States, being the democratic nation it was, still decided to have an election in 1864, although martial law was still declared. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. It really just depends on what Ukraine does. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from David Palomares, who says, when do you think the Ukrainian pilots will finish their F-16 training?
I'm not entirely sure, and I can't really say whether they're training here or not. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. But if they were training, I would say it would probably be several more months. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for a really interesting question.
All right, and I think this is our final one of the night, and it goes to Richard Philpott, who says, there is photo evidence of the Russians rebuilding the Kerch Road Bridge. Have you any more info?
Sadly, Richard, I hate to say it, I don't have any info on that. The info on the Kerch Bridge is largely gone completely out. We don't know if the road bridge is getting fixed. We don't know if the railroad bridge has even been repaired. We have no idea what's going on at the Kerch Bridge anymore. All we know, last we saw, railroad bridge was moderately damaged. Road bridge was almost knocked out except for one lane. So if we can find any of that information, we will make sure to report on it on stream. But right now, I'd have to declare ignorance on that question. But with that, that was the final question of the night, and I thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to cover the news with each and every one of y'all over this past 48 hours. And of course, if you did enjoy, please make sure to subscribe, as this helps this channel to keep on running, and it helps us to spread the word as to what we do. Of course, thank you all so much once again. I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine on day 260. Thank you all once again. I hope you all have a great night and take care. And also, Slava Ukraini.
Yes. The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу.